subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Fugako felt was anger because a large amount of Konoha's effective force had been lost on the battlefield. He quickly approached Hyuga Tokuyo, who was kneeling, and asked, "Didn't the Uchiha Clan claim that the Byakugan is stronger than the Sharingan? How did you make the battlefield look like this?" Tokuyo knelt on the ground without saying a word. In front of him lay the body of his son, Sakisho. Fugako was furious, then asked the Uchiha Clan ninja next to Tokuyo, and got an unexpected answer. Kirigakure sent a large force of 1,000 people. How is that possible? Didn't you have Byakugan? Why didn't you ask for our help first when you knew there were 1,000 people? They used Kirigakure no Jutsu to cover their forces while simultaneously maintaining a very compact formation, which caused us to misjudge the number of enemies attacking. So we didn't ask for help from you. By the time they were close, it was already too late. Foolish, Fugako cursed angrily. The Uchiha Clan's Byakugan could indeed see thousands of meters, but it would also be obstructed by the thick fog of Kirigakure no Jutsu. Although they knew there were enemies, they couldn't directly see their numbers. Moreover, the Kirigakure ninja marched close together, making the Uchiha Clan's reconnaissance team think they were a smaller force. This was why the Uchiha Clan's position suffered so many casualties. 113. The lost Byakugan Fugako had a headache. He didn't expect Kirigakure to fool the Uchiha Clan with just a little trick. But on second thought, he felt this might not be a bad thing. After all, it was the Uchiha Clan's forces that suffered great losses. Combined with the fact that he led the Uchiha Clan and his subordinates to victory, this clear contrast was enough to illustrate the role of the Uchiha Clan. Shintaro seemed to understand Fugaku's thoughts and thought to himself, "It seems Fugako still doesn't understand Konoha's high-level officials. The Uchiha Clan's good service will only make them more fearful." He was also the head of the Gojo family in a previous life, and it was clear that the conflict between Konoha's top management and the Uchiha Clan could not be resolved by doing a few good deeds. Of course, it was impossible for him to express his inner thoughts, at least not too clearly. "My condolences." Fugako sighed slightly, walked towards Tokuyo, and spoke. Only then did he realize that Sakisho's right eye socket was empty, and his entire eyeball had been gouged out. Tokuyo ignored Fugako, stood up, and walked directly towards several branch ninjas of the Uchiha Clan. "Is this how you protect Sakisho?" He scolded sternly, then formed a seal. After the branch family begged for mercy, but to no avail, they fell to the ground and wailed in pain. Shintaro clicked his tongue, crossed his arms, and watched everything quietly. Fugako and Shintaro exchanged glances. Although he couldn't stand this behavior, after all, it was the Uchiha Clan's family matter, and Fugako couldn't interfere even if he wanted to. The Uchiha Clan's Byakugan was indeed highly coveted, compared to the Sharingan, which required the Uchiha Clan's bloodline to unleash its true capabilities. The threshold for using the Byakugan was much lower. Basically, after transplanting it and learning the control techniques, one could master it perfectly, almost no different from a typical member of the Uchiha Clan. Although the Uchiha Clan's caste system was overly complicated, it was the final choice. The branch family not only had to protect the main family, but were also branded with the caged bird seal. The caged bird seal would limit the Byakugan's vision of the branch family, allowing the main family to control and destroy the branch family's brain nerves. It would also automatically destroy the Byakugan when removed or upon death. The caged bird seal mark would only disappear after death. In this way, the branch family members would not only lose their Byakugan, but also protect it. However, even with this system in place, the Byakugan was still lost this time. Tokuyo punished the branch family members responsible for protecting Sakisho, then approached Fugako with a stern face. "Now, the Uchiha Clan should be satisfied. I will be blamed and resign, and the remaining forces will be handed over to you." He had lost his son in his old age and was disheartened. Fugako was pleased in his heart, but his face remained tense, and he spoke flatly. "Why bother? If we hadn't gone to the battlefield, such a tragedy wouldn't have happened. So, reluctantly, I will take over the remaining forces. There were a total of 5,000 troops on the southeastern defense line. After Jiraiya was transferred, 2,000 people were commanded by Minato on the southern front, and 1,000 people were disbanded into small teams to form the rear defense line commanded by the clans. Now, after 2 battles, the Hyuga clan still had 600 people under its command, and the Uchiha clan still had nearly 800 people under its command. If both forces were under Fugaku's command, then the number of troops under his command would be hundreds more than before the war. So he was naturally pleased deep in his heart. Tokuyo first disposed of his son's body. There were no coffins on the battlefield, so stretchers and white cloth could only be used as temporary morgues. Then, he wrote a letter and sent it to Konoha, returning to Konoha with his son's body. Fugaku was busy in various positions, mobilizing troops and consolidating defenses. But what awaited him was a transfer order. Hyuga Tokuyo resigned, and Nara Shikaku was transferred to the southeastern defense line to take over the former Hyuga Tokuyo's troops. Damn it, Fugaku was rarely so angry. He wasn't angry at Shikaku, who had taken half of his command, but at Konoha's top management who made this decision. Konoha's top management seemed to fear that the Uchiha clan would gain more power, so they didn't hesitate to transfer Shikaku from the Western Front, where the troop strength was very tight, to divide the military power controlled by the Uchiha clan. One day, I will take back everything that belongs to the Uchiha clan. Fugaku also planted a seed in his heart, and Shintaro saw it. Shikaku-sensei is coming? Shintaro asked knowingly. He had already read this transfer letter beforehand. Fugaku recovered from his previous bitterness and hatred, raised his head, and smiled wryly. Yes, he will take over Hyuga Tokuyo's previous position. Then, we might join Shikaku-sensei to launch a counterattack. Shintaro said. Fugaku also found some comfort in his heart. At least he is a smart person. At the same time, in the Kirigakure fortress near the coast of the Land of Fire, a man lay on the operating table with his eyes closed. This man was Ao, the person in charge of the fortress. Ao-sama. The operation was successful. The medical ninja beside him woke Ao up. Ao slowly opened his eyes, and his right eye suddenly turned white. He slowly stood up. The difference in vision between near and far, coupled with the effects of anesthesia not fully wearing off, made him almost fall. Fortunately, the medical ninja beside him supported him. Ao closed his right eye, which had not yet adapted, and propped himself up on the operating table and said, "Go. Find me an eye patch first." Only when the medical ninja brought an eye patch and Ao put it on his right eye did he feel more comfortable. He left the operating room, and many ninjas were waiting outside the door to congratulate him on the successful operation. Ao had now become the center of attention in Kirigakure village. He led 1,000 troops in the fortress to launch a surprise attack, damaging Konoha's defense line and winning the village's attention. The Mizukage gave him the Byakugan. Therefore, many people wanted to curry favor with Ao. In the distance, a blue-clothed girl with long reddish-brown hair joined in the fun and stood on tiptoes to look. "It's the Byakugan. It's all covered. We can't see anything." Boring. The blue-clothed girl was naturally Terumi Mei. Terumi muttered a few words and left, and she could see the Byakugan's activity. As for flattering Ao, she didn't have this option at all. The Hyuga clan took a hard hit, but the Uchiha clan defeated us. Indeed, the Uchiha clan is still stronger. Uchih, that stinky Uchiha Shintaro should be here too. The handsome boy suddenly appeared in Terumi's mind since the two met in the Land of Waves. She could never forget this figure again. What am I thinking? I'll go on patrol. Terumi then left the fortress and patrolled according to the mission's requirements. 114. Meeting Terumi Mei again 2 days later at the Konoha camp. Shikaku-sensei. Shintaro was in charge of receiving Shikaku, who had come from the Western Front, and they both walked towards the command camp where Fugaku was. "How have you been lately?" Shikaku asked with a smile. "Not bad, but after all, we're on the battlefield. How comfortable can we really be?" "Haha, forget it. I was on the Western Front, and sometimes I sneaked deep behind enemy lines into the land of wind. The environment was so harsh that I could eat 2 bowls of sand a day, even though they hadn't seen each other for a long time. They were very familiar with one another, and there was no sense of alienation at all. Captain, Shikaku-sensei has arrived. Shintaro and Shikaku enter the camp. Fugaka stood up and exchanged a few words with Shikaku, and Shikaku quickly inquired about specific matters. After all, he had just been transferred from the Western Front and wasn't yet aware of the situation. The current situation on the Eastern Front is like this. There are 1,000 troops in the rear, and we have 1,357 troops under our command. These forces were previously commanded separately, but as you can see, they were nearly defeated by Kirigakure one by one. So, I propose that we join forces to ensure the security of the defense line. Fugaku sought Shikaku's cooperation, something the Uchiha clan wouldn't easily agree to. The idea of combining forces under one roof sounded good. But whose orders would the troops follow when going into battle? After all, Fugaka had more troops remaining, and more people would definitely follow his orders. Perhaps even ninjas from other clans would follow his orders. Shikaku stroked his beard and muttered, "That's because we don't have enough troops anymore." In this case, combining forces for defense is our only option. Seeing Shikaku agree right away, Fugaka couldn't help but smile. "Excellent." Shikaku suddenly asked, "I heard from Shintaro that you seem to want to launch a counterattack against Kirigakure?" Fugaka nodded. "Yes, Konoha has always been on the defensive. Now that the battle has reached a stalemate for so long, it's time to launch a counterattack." Shikaku continued stroking his beard. "I don't mind, but before launching a counterattack, we need to learn more about the enemy's specific layout, and intelligence work is crucial. Do you have a suitable candidate?" Fugako asked. "Isn't the candidate right next to you and me?" Shikaku spread his hands and showed a mysterious smile. The two of them then looked at Shintaro simultaneously. "Shikaku-sensei, it's not appropriate to treat me like a laborer as soon as you arrive, is it?" Shintaro joked with a smile. "No choice. Who's the most suitable person for this task?" Shikaku looked into his eyes and said meaningfully. Fugako asked, "Shintaro, how about it? Do you accept this mission?" "Since both the captain and Shikaku-sensei have spoken, of course, I have to comply." Shintaro chose to accept the task and left the camp. "Asuma, call Tetsuo and Hamasu. We have a mission." Asuma then summoned the other two. Shintaro began giving instructions for the mission. "This is a reconnaissance mission. We need to cross the buffer zone to detect Kirigakure's specific deployment. It's been a long time since we carried out a reconnaissance mission." Asuma sighed emotionally. "Yes, the last time we carried out a reconnaissance mission together was on the northeastern defense line." Tetsuo nodded and said, "Let's go." Shintaro led the three of them towards the buffer zone. On the way, his 6 eyes kept flashing, continuously scanning the surrounding area. Although no troops were stationed in the buffer zone, there were often small teams sent by both sides. The forest in the Land of Fire was tall and dense, providing good cover. Without using 6 eyes or other perception methods, the enemy might not be seen until they were face to face. The 4 of them headed towards the coast. At the same time, a Kirigakure patrol team came from the opposite direction. "Miss, our patrol route has ended, and we should head back." A middle-aged ninja earnestly persuaded. "You go back. I'll investigate further. This is also a contribution to the village." The young woman replied earnestly. Don't worry, I won't go far." This eldest woman was naturally Terumi Mei. Terumi left her 3 teammates and ventured deeper into the buffer zone alone. "Oh, I finally got rid of them. It's so boring to follow a fixed route. I need to change things up." Terumi liked new things and hated sameness. Such a personality could at best be described as determined and enterprising, but at worst, it was like a little girl's mentality of loving the new and hating the old. Of course, deliberately changing routes on the battlefield showed that Terumi had full confidence in her own strength. She was only 12 years old, had mastered the water element very well, and had 2 Kekiai Genkai, Futon and Yoton. Unless she was unlucky. "Uchiha, Shintaro," Terumi was startled by the white-haired boy who suddenly appeared before her. The young man smiled mischievously and said, "Why? No greeting after so long." Terumi's expression was quite extraordinary. First, she was slightly surprised, then realizing this was the battlefield, she immediately showed a wary expression and backed off a little. "What are you up to?" Hearing Terumi's wary question, Shintaro smiled faintly and said, "Just asking for directions." Terumi showed a sudden realization and nodded heavily. "I see. Kirigakure no jutsu." Terumi formed a seal and released a thick mist, then ran. "If you can't beat me, you can't run away, hee." Terumi was very proud of her intelligence. However, she soon realized that no matter how fast she ran, she couldn't move one step forward. She turned around, and the thick mist behind her was being absorbed by a blue orb in Shintaro's hand, then casually thrown aside to disperse. Behind Terumi, there was a blue orb absorbing her body, preventing her from moving forward. Now Shintaro's mastery of blue had even surpassed his previous life, allowing him to control the direction and intensity of the pulling force quite freely. For the first strike, Shintaro controlled the pulling force to only absorb the water vapor in the surrounding air. For the second strike, Shintaro controlled the pull and the direction of the pull simultaneously, making it impossible for Terumi to move one step forward, yet without causing any injuries. Terumi was shocked, but quickly calmed down and showed a smile. "Misunderstanding, I remembered I still have some tasks to complete. Can you let me go back first?" She lowered her head and asked while clasping her hands together. "No need to rush back. It won't be too late to answer a few of my questions before going back." Shintaro still had a playful expression. Terumi swallowed nervously and said, "What do you want to ask?" "The specific deployment of Kirigakure's fortress. How many people are there? Who's the commander? What's your troop transport route? And what's the war's purpose?" Shintaro asked a series of questions in quick succession. Terumi smiled and said, "I'm just an ordinary ninja. How could I know so much? How about you let me go back and ask?" Shintaro calmly activated his 3 Tomo Sharingan, which frightened Terumi, who closed her eyes in panic. "I don't want to." 115. Terumi Mei's captivity. Terumi knew the power of the Sharingan's Jinjutsu, so she was afraid Shintaro would use it to extract information from her. Shintaro approached Terumi and said, "If you're so scared, just answer my questions." Terumi was almost in tears. "I really don't know what you're asking. There are quite a few people in the camp. I don't know the details. There should be more than 1,000, and the commander is Ao, the one who took the Byakugan from Konoha some time ago." Terumi disclosed some trivial information, appearing panicked but actually being cautious. Shintaro was not satisfied with this answer. "Anything else?" "I really don't know. How about you let me go back, and I can spy for you?" Terumi said hesitantly. Shintaro pretended to think, and then asked, "What if you rebel and don't come back?" "I swear," Terumi said, pointing to the sky, "if I betray you, I'll never be able to marry, and no man will ever want me." Her words were sincere, and she seemed earnest. Shintaro smiled and said, "This is a very poisonous oath for you. Seeing you so sincere, I'll let you go." "Really?" Terumi did not expect to be able to return with such a small trick, so she opened her eyes excitedly. However, what she saw was a pair of blood red and blue Magatama Sharingan. Jinjutsu. Terumi was hit, and her eyes instantly became dull. Beside her, Asuma shook his head and said, "You're really good at deceiving women. No wonder you could fool Kurenai." Tetsuo and Hamasu also quietly praised Shintaro. "That's different. I'm sincere with Kurenai." Shintaro responded to Asuma's teasing with a smile. Asuma was non-committal and then asked, "How are you going to use this woman to get information?" "Don't worry, watch my performance." Shintaro turned and said jokingly, "Sharingan's Jinjutsu was passed down in the Uchiha Clan. Its effect was to confuse the enemy's mind and make them obey orders. This illusion effect was very strong, but also had significant limitations. One was the timing, as the illusion could only last a few hours, and the second was that the content of the command could not contradict the user's will. For example, Terumi is a Kirigakure ninja. If Shintaro wanted to command her to attack other Kirigakure ninjas, Terumi would wake up immediately. This greatly limited the use of this illusion space. However, Shintaro already had an idea. He approached Terumi and softly said, "I am a spy sent to Konoha by Kirigakure." Terumi's eyes cleared, but she still looked at him in confusion and murmured, "Are you a spy?" "Yes, I received information that Konoha is going to counterattack Kirigakure and that the main force will attack the eastern fortress. I hope you can relay this news back." Terumi nodded and said, "I understand." Shintaro withdrew his blue control over Terumi. The blue light disappeared, and since the suction power vanished instantly, Terumi had been using her own strength to resist blue, so she stumbled and fell into Shintaro's arms. With a magnetic voice, Shintaro gently supported Terumi and slowly said, "Also, I have been hiding in Konoha for too long and don't know much about the current situation in Kirigakure. I hope you can provide me with a detailed copy of the information so that I can better serve the village. Don't let others know about this because my identity needs to be kept secret." His tone was like someone trying to deceive a naive girl. Terumi slightly nodded. "Go on." Terumi left just like that. Asuma asked in confusion, "Why did you give her our information?" "What information?" "That was clearly a smoke bomb created by Konoha." A smile played at the corner of Shintaro's mouth as he watched Terumi's retreating figure and said. Asuma's eyes widened, as if he had realized something. "I see." Terumi returned to the fortress, and her previous teammates rushed up. "Miss, you're finally back." Terumi raised her hand and said, "If you're worried, we'll talk about it later. I want to see Ao. I have information." She soon met Ao. Ao was sitting in his office, stroking the eye patch over his right eye with one hand, leaning on the desk with the other, and asked, "What information do you have?" "Just tell me." "Konoha is going to counterattack the fortress." "What? Where did you get this information?" The first thing Ao thought of when he got this information was to confirm whether it was true or false. However, Terumi vaguely said, "It was revealed by a spy hidden in Konoha who can guarantee that the information is true." "A spy? Why haven't I heard that Konoha has our spy?" Ao was very confused. Could it be that the Terumi clan planted a secret spy in Konoha? Ao offered a seemingly reasonable explanation. However, he didn't fully believe it. First of all, he had just led his troops to damage Konoha not long ago. Konoha should not have replenished its forces yet. With Konoha's overly stable behavior, it was highly unlikely Konoha would take the initiative to attack. Secondly, even if it was true information brought by a spy from the Terumi clan, why would a junior tell him? In short, Ao doubted this information. "I will verify this information. You can go down and rest first." Ao waved his hand and said. Terumi then turned and walked out of the room. Ao lifted his eyes at this moment, staring at Terumi's back with a sharp and doubtful look in his left eye. Something is wrong. After Terumi left the office, she didn't return to her room, but instead went to the data room. Mississippi. The guard ninja happened to be from the Terumi clan. Terumi said, "I want to check the contents of the information." The guard ninja let Terumi in without much thought. Terumi began to search for information inside, looking for information about Kirigakure according to Shintaro's request. The number of ninjas, defense plans, route maps. She rummaged through the information one by one, carefully selecting the information she thought was useful to Shintaro and putting it on her body. Terumi, controlled by Jinjutsu, naturally believed that her actions were helping Kirigakure, so she wouldn't have any strange emotions and the Jinjutsu effect wouldn't disappear. She acted as a spy without her knowledge. After all the information was gathered, Terumi took everything and then left the data room as if nothing had happened. "No problem. All the information is complete," Terumi said to the guard, then turned to leave. "Stop." A voice halted Terumi. It was Ao. He quickly stepped forward, ignoring the information Terumi carried on her body, and asked, "The information should not be taken out of the data room without reason. Why are you carrying it with you?" Terumi was not panicked at all. After all, she was providing information to Kirigakure's spy, not Konoha. At this moment, Terumi would not rigidly follow Shintaro's request to keep it a secret. Of course, Terumi meditated and said, I am delivering the information to the Kirigikure spy hidden in Konoha. His identity is secret, so I can only convey the information secretly. 116. Jinjutsu. Bringing Kirigikure's information to a Kirigikure spy. Do you know what you're talking about? Ao found this awkward excuse very strange. Yes, because he said he had been hiding in Konoha for too long. Terumi said seriously. Then what's his name? Ao asked. Terumi suddenly paused and said, Uchiha Shintaro. Clearly, she also realized something was wrong. The effect of the Jinjutsu conflicted with her memories, causing her to hold her head in confusion. Uchiha Shintaro? That's Konoha's new genius. Ao thought of something as he spoke. Uchiha Jinjutsu. He finally understood why Terumi made a mistake. Byakugan activated. Veins appeared around his right eye, and the Byakugan vision easily penetrated the eye patch and saw the strange chakra in Terumi's body. Ao immediately placed his hand on Terumi's forehead. Terumi's eyes suddenly brightened. What happened? She asked. Ao recounted what Terumi had done. Terumi looked at the intelligence materials scattered on the ground beside her, and her memories slowly surfaced. I fell under Uchiha Shintaro's Jinjutsu. Ao showed an understanding expression and said, Tell me in detail. Terumi then recounted her experience as she remembered it. When I was patrolling, I was captured by Uchiha Shintaro. After he pressed me for information but failed, he used the Sharingan Jinjutsu on me. He told me he was a spy sent to Konoha by Kirigikure. He told me information about Konoha's attack on the fortress and asked me to bring him information about Kirigikure. Ao began his own analysis. So, Uchiha Shintaro wanted to use you to spread false information and obtain our information. Fortunately, I saw it with my Byakugan. He lightly touched his right eye, looking somewhat satisfied. Then what should we do now? Should we trust the information given by Uchiha Shintaro? After all, Terumi was still quite young, so she was confused about handling such a situation. Ao said confidently, What information? It's clearly a smokescreen created by Konoha. They must want to divert troops away from the mountains and let us focus on the eastern front, thus taking the opportunity to attack the southern front. I will inform the commander on the southern front of this news and deploy troops for support. For the rest, let's follow the plan. If you bring the intelligence back tonight, it will only be false intelligence. Better not meet him. He might realize you've broken the Jinjutsu. Terumi found Ao's words reasonable, so she nodded. Ao then asked her to forge documents. Konoha camp. Shintaro explained to Fugaku and Shikaku what he had done with Terumi, that he had cast Jinjutsu on her and set her up. Fugaku pondered. Jinjutsu must be used continuously to be effective. No matter how high your Jinjutsu achievement, it will automatically dissipate after a few hours. At that time, won't our goal be exposed? Before Shintaro could speak, Shikaku answered Fugaku's question and said, Even if Kirigikure finds out about the Jinjutsu, it can't be stopped, so Kirigikure will treat the information about our counterattack as fake news, and our counterattack could be unexpected. Shintaro spoke at this moment. My goal from the beginning was to let the enemy discover my Jinjutsu. Don't forget, they took Byakugan from the Uchiha Clan and put it in the eye socket of Fortress Commander Ao. Fugaku and Shikaku both showed understanding expressions. In this way, whether Kirigikure discovers the Jinjutsu or not, it will be beneficial to us. Fugaku said, clapping his hands. Shikaku asked again, but we still don't know the specific information about Kirigikure. How will we solve it? Shintaro replied, Of course I need to investigate it myself. Next, regardless of whether Terumi Mei's Jinjutsu is broken or not, the information will definitely come out tonight. I just need to approach the Kirigikure fortress for a little verification to know whether Kirigikure has fallen into the trap. Shikaku praised, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, a great strategy. At night, Shintaro came to the place where he had met Terumi before and found a tree with an engraved mark on it. He checked the information, which seemed quite real. It included information about the number of Kirigikure ninjas, their defenses, coastal fortresses, and the headquarters of the Land of Waves, etc. He took the information into his arms and did not return to the Konoha camp, but instead came to the headquarters under the forest protection. After scanning with the 6 eyes, he quickly found that the actual situation did not match the intelligence. It seems Ao indeed discovered the Jinjutsu. Shintaro judged from the authenticity of the intelligence that Ao had seen Terumi's Jinjutsu. And inside the fortress, a group of 200 soldiers set off from the fortress at this moment, heading straight south. He then verified that Kirigakure's reaction was as expected, and they indeed thought Konoha would attack the southern front. The fortress inside was empty, with less than 800 soldiers. Shintaro was not satisfied with this information. He crossed the sea and arrived at the land of waves. Under the cover of dark clouds, the moonlight did not shine on the sea, so he was not detected at all. Upon arriving in the land of waves, he found that the military strength in the headquarters of Kirigakure's land of waves was very inconsistent with the intelligence. According to the intelligence, more than 5,000 people were stationed in the land of waves. In reality, there were only 3,000 Kirigakure ninjas at the Land of Waves headquarters. The Land of Waves headquarters served as the coastal fortress's backup force and could support the front lines at any time. Kirigakure provided this false information only to make Konoha more afraid of Kirigakure on the Eastern Front, thus ensuring the safety of the Eastern Front. However, this gave Shintaro an idea. Perhaps Konoha could take advantage of it and surprise the enemy. After Shintaro personally investigated the information and returned to the camp, it was already dawn. But his energy was excellent, and the continuous reversal curse technique could heal the fatigue of the brain and body. Fugaku and Shikaku were playing shogi in the camp. They had both stayed up all night, waiting for information for Shintaro. Shintaro took out 2 pieces of information from his hands. One was the false information provided by Terumi, and the other was the real information he personally investigated that night. And false information does not mean it is useless. To deceive Konoha, Kirigakure mixed some real information into the false information. Initially, he couldn't distinguish it, but now he could differentiate it after comparing. The false information was more detailed and specific than what Shintaro himself recorded, such as the scale and accurate maps, etc. These 2 pieces of information gave a big surprise to Fugaku and Shikaku. Good. Now we have a clear idea of our counterattack plan. Fugaku spread the information on the table and said with a bit of excitement. Shikaku stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Only Shintaro can get such detailed information in one night." Shintaro waved his hand calmly and said, "Let's make the plan first." 117. Deception to the east, attack to the west. The enemy forces are weaker than we expected. We can concentrate our power to destroy Kirigakure's coastal fortress in one strike. Fugaku estimated the number of troops the enemy could deploy and compared it with their own forces. The advantage was on Konoha's side. However, Kirigakure's headquarters in the Land of Waves has always been problematic. It can support the frontline fortress when they advance and transport local Kirigakure troops when they retreat. As long as this hub exists, even if we capture the fortress, we can't expel all Kirigakure ninjas. Shikaku pointed to the small island of the Land of Waves on the map. It's okay, as long as we maintain a swift and fierce attack and capture the coastal fortress before reinforcements from the Land of Waves arrive. We can use it as a base to fend off the enemy from outside. What Fugaku said made sense. Shikaku nodded slightly, then looked at Shintaro. "What do you think?" "My thoughts? Let's try another target," Shintaro said with a smile. Seeing Fugaku and Shikaku deep in thought, he continued, "Of course, attacking the fortress would be unexpected for Kirigakure, but even more unexpected would be us directly attacking their headquarters in the Land of Waves. But we don't have enough manpower. Even if the entire force attacks, the strength at the enemy's headquarters is only slightly less than half of ours. If we attack forcefully, we might suffer significant losses." Fugaku had considered this issue, but had to give up due to the limited number of troops. Shikaku thought of something. If we attack the coastal fortress, the Land of Waves will definitely send reinforcements, and then we can seize the opportunity to attack. But it would be easy for the enemy to strike us from both sides. Fugaku still had concerns. Shintaro pointed to the map and shared his thoughts. We have 1,400 people, 400 of whom will attack the coastal fortress, using the momentum of Konoha's main force to compel Kirigakure ninjas to call for reinforcements from the Land of Waves headquarters. The remaining 1,000 will ambush the enemy reinforcements at sea, then seize the opportunity to directly attack the enemy's headquarters. Fugaku and Shikaku exchange glances. It works. However, Fugaku was still worried. In this case, both our forces will be under immense pressure. On both battlefields, we will be outnumbered. Shintaro took the initiative to take responsibility. The 1,000 troops can be led by me, and I will be responsible for annihilating the main enemy forces. Captain, you and the 400 troops only need to create momentum and draw the enemy's attention. You don't need to engage in heavy fighting. Fugaku sighed upon hearing this. After all, I'm getting old and not as strong as you. All right, let's do it. Shikaku also agreed, and the time for this counterattack was set for tonight. The three of them rested, as usual, and Fugaku and Shikaku began gathering their forces at night, so Kirigakure wouldn't have a chance to notice. Shikaku allocated the troops according to a temporary list. He and Fugaku led 400 people, and Shintaro led 1,000 on his own. As for the supplies and equipment, they were divided in half, so the 400 could fight 1,000 for a short time. Shintaro led the team on a detour to the coast, while Fugaku and Shikaku led their 400 troops directly to the coastal fortress. We can blow up the warehouse. This will not only create momentum, but also weaken Kirigakure's strength. Fugaku first asked Shikaku's opinion. There was nothing special about the attack direction, and the strategic significance of destroying the warehouse was indeed substantial, so Shikaku agreed without much thought. After the two commanders agreed, the order was passed down. The troops turned and headed north. Dim moonlight illuminated their way, and the tracks of the forces in the forest were not clear. Who? A Kirigakure ninja on night patrol cautiously drew a kunai. Fugaku's figure emerged from the dark forest, his eyes blood-red, like a ferocious demon. Jinjutsu. The Kirigakure ninja's figure froze, and his throat was sealed by a kunai strike. Fugaku withdrew his kunai and attached an explosive tag to it. He then looked back and saw everyone was ready. He gave a command, and everyone threw their explosive tag kunai. Boom, the northern wall of the fortress was blown up by the explosive tags. Inside the Kirigakure fortress was a coastal village occupied by Kirigakure, and the outer wall was built later with timber, so its defenses were not high. Katan, Raika, no Jutsu. Fugaku's dragonfire technique was quite large-scale, directly destroying several houses and killing many Kirigakure ninjas on the spot. Kagenui no Jutsu. Several Kirigakure ninjas surrounded them and jumped, raising their swords to attack Fugaku, but Shikaku restrained them with one move. Fugaku killed the Kirigakure ninjas with a few shurikens on their backs. The two created a breach for the Konoha troops, and the Konoha troops stormed in, attacking the fortress indiscriminately. Ao was reviewing the list of supplies that had just been delivered and immediately approached the window when he heard the noise. Byakugan. He saw through the building walls and clearly observed the attacking Konoha ninjas. 400 Konoha ninjas. Huh, it's really a trick. Do you think you can deceive me? Ao still believed the news that Konoha would attack the eastern fortress was false, thinking that these 400 Konoha ninjas were merely drawing weapons to the southern front. Fortunately, I have already sent 200 elite troops to support the southern front. Now, there are more than 1,700 people there. Ao rolled his eyes. Instead of worrying about the fortress he was guarding, he was planning for his comrades on the southern front. Ao-sama, a Kirigakure ninja, rushed in. I understand. It's just Konoha entering, isn't it? Just Konoha. The second line of defense has fallen. What? Ao, who had been strategizing calmly, suddenly lost his composure. Kirigakure also knew that the temporary outer wall was fragile, so they built 2 stone positions inside the wall. 3 lines of defense were formed in the fortress. Inside the third line of defense were the most important supply and command locations. Ao opened his Byakugan again, confirming the authenticity of the news. It turns out to be Konoha's elite troops. Does Konoha plan to have both? He was still trying to figure out Konoha's intentions, but time waits for no one. He immediately rushed out of the command post and deployed his troops to fill the gap in the northern position. After all, the number of Kirigakure ninjas was twice that of Konoha in the fortress, but Konoha concentrated their power and broke through the defense line. As long as the other ninjas filled the void, everything would be fine. But it wasn't. The Konoha troops, led by Fugaku, were incredibly brave, and their ample supply of ninja equipment allowed the Konoha troops to explode with astonishing offensive power. Soon, under the leadership of Fugaku and Shikaku, Konoha broke through all three lines of defense. Fugaku rushed to the warehouse and released a fireball, blowing up the warehouse wall. When he was once again ready to use a fireball to blow up the explosive tags in the warehouse, a water wall blocked the fireball attack. Boom, in the mist, it was Ao who confronted Fugaku. This battle between Byakugan and Sharingan from Konoha occurred between Kirigakure and Konoha. 118. Night attack on a land of waves before Ao rushed to the battlefield. He had ordered his men to go to the land of waves to ask for reinforcements. Therefore, as long as the enemy was held back, the entire elite Konoha force would be destroyed here. Even though Uchiha Fugaku in front of him was somewhat tricky, Ao could still fight as long as he worked hard. Thus, Ao considered this a sure thing. However, in reality, the Byakugan did not provide a significant boost in combat strength, placing Ao at a disadvantage during their fight. Fortunately, he was proficient in water element techniques and was barely able to hold his ground under Fugaku's strong fire escape attacks. Meanwhile, as the ninja in the fortress fought fiercely, the Konoha forces had completed their deployment on the vast ocean. These Konoha forces had no ships for transport, so they simply used chakra to walk on water. This way, they wouldn't be too conspicuous even in the endless sea. However, Shintaro still ordered everyone to lower their bodies while he used his 6 eyes to scout around. And indeed, he spotted a speedboat departing from the fortress. The speedboat was heading directly to the land of waves. Shintaro waited patiently with the large force. Asuma was now quite calm, at least on the battlefield. Tetsuo and Hamasu were also ready. Shintaro observed the reactions of the surrounding Konoha ninja, and they were all very serious. It seemed that, except for him, no one could relax with fewer fights. However, being more serious on the battlefield was certainly a good thing. The ambush location was between the coastal fortress and the headquarters in the Land of Waves. It didn't take long for Shintaro to reach the Kirigakure reinforcement fleet. 1,000 people. Remember, leave the ships, but not the people. Shintaro's orders were passed down layer by layer, and then he led the charge towards the front boats. Curse technique lapse, blue. An unfortunate Kirigakure ninja bore the brunt of the attack, being sucked towards Shintaro and receiving a blow, causing his head to be severed. Shintaro rushed into the crowd, and he was invincible with his infinity automatically activated and his dual fists, constantly moving in and out of the crowd. Suidun, Suidan no Jutsu. 5x several Kirigakure Jonin collaborated to condense seawater into a giant water dragon, swinging its massive body from the night sky to crush him. You don't want the boats, but I still do. As the water dragon fell, Shintaro remained unharmed, but the boat was definitely beyond saving. Blue. Shintaro released a blue sphere with both hands, striking the water dragon. The strong suction force captured the seawater originally controlled by chakra. The seawater formed a giant water ball and fell into the sea, creating huge waves that lifted the boat into the air. Several Kirigakure Jonin drew their swords and attacked Shintaro, their sword skills undoubtedly fierce, making them masters in Kirigakure. Unfortunately, Shintaro automatically blocked the blades without needing to face them. Blue. The Kirigakure Jonin tried to dodge, but were sucked in by the sudden suction force, colliding with each other. Red. He fired at several mist ninja stacked in close proximity. The Kirigakure ninja tried to block with their swords, but failed. At this moment, the Konoha ninja also began boarding the ships one by one. As long as the ships were not damaged, Asuma's wind element taijutsu was very suitable. The sharp wind blades were deadly weapons to the enemy, but caused no damage to the ships. Tetsuo and Hamasu, who excelled in fire element, could only use ninja tools and taijutsu to fight as much as possible. Of course, occasional jutsus could still be used. After fierce fighting, Shintaro alone defeated hundreds of enemies. The remaining enemies were also killed by the large force. Although Konoha had only about 100 casualties, this was already considered a great victory. Inevitably, some ships were sunk. These losses meant nothing to everyone. But in Shintaro's eyes, it was different. Would have been better if you had left everything to me. This thought was his fault for sacrificing Konoha Ninja and his arrogance, because he was only at his strongest when he had no doubts. However, Shintaro knew that while he might not rely on his comrades in this battle, to achieve his goal of changing the world and altering the Uchiha Clan, he still had to rely on his comrades. So this idea remained in his mind. Seeing the battlefield cleared, Shintaro immediately ordered, "Select 100 people, wear Kirigakure ninja outfits, and spread out to all the ships to disguise. The rest hide in the cabins and wait until the ships dock before coming out." If Shintaro had ever heard of ancient Greek mythology in his previous life, he would surely know that this was a classic Trojan horse trap. After disguising, the group returned to the Kirigakure port in the Land of Waves. What happened? Didn't they just leave? A Kirigakure ninja responsible for guarding the port expressed his doubts, but still allowed the ships to dock. "Why did you come back? Also, are there some ships missing?" The Kirigakure ninja stepped forward and asked. Whoosh, the disguised Konoha ninja, suddenly rose and stabbed a kunai into the Kirigakure ninja's neck, causing blood to splatter all over his face. Shintaro almost flew from the boat to the shore. "Remove your disguise to avoid accidental injury." His voice was loud enough to remind all the disguised personnel on the ships. "Well done." Shintaro again praised the Konoha ninja who had just handed the kunai to the Kirigakure ninja and lightly patted his shoulder. This ninja was a young chunin with excellent strength. He was expected to become a jonin in the future. His name was Mizuki. At this moment, Kirigakure ninjas had attacked, and Shintaro launched a powerful strike. The dense black ball flew backwards at high speed, hitting the middle of the Kirigakure ninja group. Boom, the Kirigakure ninja and buildings in the port were destroyed by the rapidly expanding and exploding purple. A true man never looks back at explosions, but looks at the Konoha ninja behind him. "You only need to clean up and leave the Kirigakure headquarters to me." Mizuki looked at Shintaro with a very excited expression. He was clearly older, but he looked like a little fanboy in front of Shintaro. Ninjas always spoke with their strength, and Shintaro exuded the aura of a mature and powerful person. After Shintaro handed over the task, he turned and flew into the air, looking like a god. Next, it was almost just Shintaro's appearance. Curse technique lapse, blue. Curse technique reversal, red. Hollow technique, purple. Shintaro had no bottom limit, could completely ignore various enemy attacks, and concentrated on activating the Limitless technique to attack. He unleashed his full power, and the Kirigakure ninja were no match. Everyone in Konoha looked more and more shocked. This was simply a humanoid bijou. Although Shintaro's victory over Hachibi and earning the title of White-Hair Devil Eyes had spread to Konoha, there were no Konoha witnesses. Now, the Konoha people witnessed what a humanoid bijou was and what White-Hair Devil Eyes were. Of course, the current perspective of the Kirigakure ninja was the first-person perspective. After trying to prevent a counterattack, but failing, the Kirigakure ninja lost the will to fight and fled one by one. However, the Kirigakure ninja were already surrounded by Konoha ninja, and both sides engaged in close-quarters combat. The Kirigakure ninja, who had lost their fighting spirit, were no match for the highly motivated Konoha ninja. Moreover, Shintaro's 6 eyes could accurately identify Kirigakure and Konoha ninja. Under the influence of various factors, Kirigakure's total defeat became a reality. 119. Mangekyo, Sharingan, Shintaro slowly fell from the air, his breath becoming slightly heavier. He did have 6 eyes, but after all, he was not a machine that moved continuously and would still get tired. Clear the battlefield as quickly as possible. After he finished speaking, he looked towards the coast of the Land of Fire across the sea and thought, it should be there. In the camp, the battle had been going on for quite some time. Damn, why hasn't reinforcements arrived yet? Ao was injured by Fugaku and relied on the rescue of several jonin to retreat to the rear. The situation on the battlefield was still not optimistic. Although Kirigakure had more people than Konoha, they could never gain the upper hand. Ao observed the battlefield with Byakugan. All the Konoha ninja had penetrated the 3 defense lines and arrived near the most important warehouse in the fortress. If they went deeper, they would reach the post with many secret documents. Therefore, the Konoha ninja must not be allowed to break through further. However, judging from the remaining strength of Kirigakure, it was almost impossible to stop the Konoha ninja. Burn the command post, especially the information room. Ao immediately ordered, and several ninjas started a large fire and burned the command post. At this time, there were more than 400 people left in Kirigakure and more than 200 left in Konoha. Both sides had suffered almost half of the losses, and Ao had already made plans to retreat. Ao-sama. A ninja ran from afar. Have the reinforcements arrived? Ao asked anxiously. Now, the supporting troops could influence the situation on the battlefield. However, the ninjas sent to receive reinforcements replied, there are no reinforcements. I went to the sea to see, and I only found a sunken ship and the floating corpses of reinforcements. Ao's hair stood on end, and he realized that the Konoha troops in front of him were encircling the area to search for reinforcements. Now that his reinforcements were gone, wasn't he next? So he resolutely issued a more radical retreat order. Blow up the warehouse. Then everyone retreat to the southern front. Ao saw that the war situation had become like this and understood that the eastern front battlefield had to be abandoned. Those who lost like them could only go to the southern front to seek support. Before retreating, the supplies in the warehouse must be blown up, and Konoha should not benefit from them. But if we do that, the newly arrived explosive tags in the warehouse will also explode, and there are still our teammates defending there. After receiving the order, the Kirigakure ninja couldn't bring themselves to execute it. However, Ao saw this and said coldly, this is the last chance to damage Konoha. The sacrifice of a small number of people is not in vain. Since you are unwilling, then I will blow it up myself. On the other hand, on the battlefield, Fugaku struggled to deal with the encirclement strategy of 4 jonin. At this time, a figure joined the battlefield. Captain Fugaku, let me help you. Shigenamura, thank you very much. Fugaku could recognize the person's identity by hearing his voice. Uchiha Shigenamura had been Fugaku's friend for many years and was also the father of Tetsuo and Hamasu. Fugaku asked, how long has it been since we fought side by side? Almost 10 years. Shigenamura replied, time flies so fast. Fugaku sighed. The two fought side by side. Shigenamura blocked 2 enemies for Fugaku and held on with difficulty, creating an opportunity for Fugaku to break through. Fire release. Dragon fire technique. Fugaku spewed a fierce dragon fire, but was blocked by the combined water formation walls of 2 Kirigakure jonin on the opposite side. In the rising mist, 2 shuriken appeared from both sides, catching the 2 Kirigakure ninja off guard. But after all, they were jonin, so they turned to avoid the shuriken. However, the shuriken suddenly came from behind and stabbed into their backs. Just when the enemies were distracted, Fugaku leaped out of the mist, quickly approached them, and fought with kunai in hand. Genjutsu, Sharingan, in close combat. It was difficult for the Kirigakure ninja to avoid his gaze, and they were temporarily affected by the illusion. Fugaku plunged the kunai into the opponent's heart without hesitation, then turned and kicked the other who wanted a sneak attack. Fire release. Phoenix Sage fire technique. The Kirigakure ninja flipped in the air, swung his ninja sword to defend hastily, but was injured by a large number of flames. Fugaku took the opportunity to grab the ninja sword from the ground of the other Kirigakure ninja and threw it. Whoosh! The flying ninja sword pierced through the night sky directly and accurately through the Kirigakure ninja's throat. The Kirigakure ninja landed on the ground, covering his neck with his hands, and slowly lost his life. At this moment, Fugaku turned around. Shigenamura was clearly struggling against the two enemies and was about to be stabbed by the Kirigakure ninja's sword. Fugaku immediately accurately hit the tip of the Kirigakure ninja's sword with a shuriken, causing it to miss the vital point. Chakra erupted from the soles of his feet, and he rushed forward and kicked the Kirigakure ninja into the warehouse. "Thank you, Captain Fugaku, for your rescue." Shigenamura covered his wound and expressed his gratitude. Fugaku said, "We are all friends, as it should be." His emotions were quite closed, and he did not have many friends he recognized in his heart. Uchiha Shimizu, who was once almost classified as a traitor, was one of them, and Uchiha Shigenamura, who was loyal to him, was also his friend. Shigenamura was acknowledged and very touched. The other Kirigakure ninja saw the situation was not going well and wanted to escape, but how could Fugaku allow it? Fire release, Phoenix Sage fire technique. Fire release, Dragon fire technique. Fugaku and Shigenamura used a small, smooth combo to tie up the Kirigakure ninja and burn them into charred corpses. "Well done," Fugaku praised, and the two entered the warehouse. However, at this time, he saw the explosive tags detonating. Danger! He immediately realized that it might be too late to escape. Earth release, Earth-style wall. Boom! Almost simultaneously, there was a deafening explosion. Fugaku's ears were somewhat deaf from the explosion, and he could still hear sharp screams. He and Shigenamura were at the center of the explosion. Even if they were protected by the earth current wall released by him, the situation was very dangerous. The warehouse stored various war materials used by the entire Kirigakure ninja camp. This included a large number of explosive tags. The explosive tags produced a series of explosions strong enough to flatten nearby buildings. Worse, the explosion also blasted all kinds of ninja tools, and these ninja tools all became the most deadly weapons. The hot explosive air wave triggered countless kunai, which immediately filled the earth wall. As the explosion roared, cracks slowly appeared on the earth wall. Fugaku endured the pain in his internal organs and formed seals to reinforce the earth wall defense. But the earth wall still shattered under the explosion. The high-temperature air wave brought deadly stones and ninja tools from all directions. At this moment, Shigenamura suddenly threw Fugaku to the ground. He used his body to protect Fugaku. His body was very fragile. The blown stones hit the huge flames, the high-speed attacking ninja tools embedded into his body, and the high-temperature explosive air wave were all fatal. As the explosion subsided, Fugaku tried hard to extinguish the flames on his body. Shigenamura turned over and fell to the ground, no longer making any sound. Fugaku, who had always been calm, shed uncontrollable tears mixed with blood on his face. He touched his eyes with trembling hands, feeling something strange in his eyes. This, Mangekyo Sharingan. 120. A technique. Fugaku used his pair of Mangekyo Sharingan to stare blankly at Shigenamura's broken body beside him and murmured, "Is this the price?" He knelt on the ground and helped Shigenamura close his eyes. "How am I supposed to explain this to your wife and 2 children?" Fugaku, the enemy has retreated. Shikaku entered the ruins of the warehouse, saw Fugaku's back kneeling on the ground, and immediately shouted. Fugaku heard Shikaku's voice in a daze and quickly closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his eyes were back to normal. "I can't let the Konoha higher-ups know about this." He subconsciously chose to hide it. After all, Shikaku was sent by the top management, and he did not trust him in his heart. Shikaku hurried towards Fugaku and saw Shigenamura's miserable body lying on the ground. "Sigh. My condolences." His previously victorious smiling face suddenly froze. The cost of this victory was indeed high. As many as 200 Konoha ninja died, like Uchiha Shigenamura. Seeing Fugaku unwilling to get up for a long time, Shikaku wisely left to clean up the mess. After a long time, a fleet arrived on the shore, and the troops led by Shintaro disembarked. Shintaro observed the fortress with his 6 eyes and said, "It seems the battle is over and this side has won." The slightly wary group immediately relaxed. "Good, it's over. It seems we will soon return to Konoha." Asuma stretched his body and said. Tetsuo patted Hamasu beside him and said, "Father must be impressed with us this time." Shintaro noticed something bad. "There are quite a few casualties here." When Asuma and the other two heard this, their expressions darkened. The troops soon arrived at the camp and saw the Konoha forces, who had suffered many casualties and were setting up a temporary medical center to treat the wounded. The remains of ninjas were still being carried out. The original force of 400 now had less than 200 left. Shintaro led the troops closer to the fortress and sighed slightly. At this point, no one was celebrating the victory. There are never winners in war. At this moment, Hamasu suddenly noticed something and ran without saying a word. Tetsuo shouted, "What are you doing?" Then he chased after him with a worried expression on his face. Hamasu threw himself beside Fugaku, knelt in front of Shigenamura's body, buried his head in the ground, and cried sadly. Tetsuo caught up and saw his father's body. "Father!" He ran to Hamasu in confusion. Fugaku said with guilt, "Your father died to save me." But Tetsuo could no longer listen. He knelt and cried like Hamasu. Fugaku sighed, stood up, and looked at Shintaro. How was the battle over there? All enemies destroyed. He was shocked to hear this, then nodded heavily and said, "Good. This can also let the sacrificed ninjas rest in peace." Shintaro nodded, then said, "Captain, you seem to have changed a lot." His tone was somewhat strange, making Fugaku understand the underlying meaning. Fugaku's eyes widened. He did not expect Shintaro to be so sharp. He looked around. Shikaku was directing medical ninjas to provide treatment in the distance. No one else was around except the 2 brothers, Tetsuo and Hamasu, who were immersed in grief. So Fugaku said seriously, "You must keep this matter a secret. We will discuss it in detail at night." "Okay," Shintaro replied, then looked at the 2 brothers kneeling on the ground crying. The 6 eyes flickered, and they saw that the emotion center in their brains was emitting special chakra. The special chakra stimulated the eyes, allowing the 2 brothers to advance to 3 Magatama, Sharingan, simultaneously. No wonder the higher-ups did not want the Uchiha Clan to go to the battlefield. The Uchiha Clan's potential for war is too great. Every clan member who dies can become a step for other clan members to enhance their power. One Uchiha Shigenamura's death gave him a pair of Mangekyo Sharingan and 2 pairs of 3 Magatama. Shintaro sighed inwardly at the Uchiha Clan's potential. No wonder the higher-ups feared the Uchiha Clan's power. The mighty power born from hatred and sorrow is indeed difficult to control. At night, the Konoha forces returned to their base. Shikaku had returned to Konoha with some troops, and now only Shintaro and Fugaku were in the command camp. The 2 sat opposite each other, and Fugaku asked, "How did you discover my Mangekyo Sharingan?" Shintaro pointed to his eyes and said, "My eyes are called 6 eyes and can be used to see through chakra." Fugaku stared at those sky-bright eyes and sighed. "Did you inherit it from your mother? It's a very powerful ability." He then activated his Mangekyo Sharingan. The pattern of the Sharingan was entirely different from the original 3 Magatama. The original 3 Magatama transformed in a hollow inverted Magatama. The Magatama heads were connected to the pupils, and there were small black circles in front of the tails of each Magatama. It looked mysterious and powerful. "This is the Mangekyo Sharingan." Shintaro sighed. The special chakra contained in the Mangekyo Sharingan far surpassed the ordinary Sharingan. Even the 3 Magatama could not match it. "Does the Mangekyo Sharingan have unique skills?" Shintaro asked. He realized that the effectiveness of the Mangekyo Sharingan should not just be an upgrade of the ordinary Sharingan. The ordinary Sharingan is quite comprehensive in the 3 abilities of insight, illusion, and copying. The extra special chakra produced by the evolved Mangekyo Sharingan should have other uses. Fugaku stroked his eyes and said, besides a significant increase in the basic abilities of the Sharingan. The Manjikyu also has a skill called pupil technique, which relies on the eye's power to activate. As the leader of the Uchiha clan, Fugaku certainly knew more than Shintaro. It's that kind of special chakra. Shintaro understood a lot and asked again, "Then what is the captain's pupil technique?" Fugaku began to explain. The right eye is called Bishamonten. Its ability is to enhance my ninjutsu and jinjutsu, and even my physical skills can be enhanced with chakra. The left eye is called Daikokuten. The ability generally means predicting the future, but it differs from predicting the future in the true sense. More accurately, it would be more consistent to replace prediction with speculation. These two abilities took me quite a while to understand. Shintaro was slightly surprised to hear this and thought, "So this is the pupil technique, and the effects are indeed very different from other techniques." This name actually comes from mythology. Shintaro came from Edo, Japan, and naturally had knowledge of Japanese mythology. Bishamonten and Daikokuten are two gods among the 7 lucky gods in Japanese mythology. It seems there's a connection between these two worlds. Shintaro paid great attention to this. Did the captain name the pupil techniques? He asked. Fugaku was slightly surprised that Shintaro's attention was actually on names. "No, I don't know why. The names just seem to pop into my mind." He was a little surprised by this, but he didn't care. Shintaro murmured, "They popped into your mind." 121. Their reactions, Fugaku closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, his eyes had returned to their normal black color. He sighed and said, "These two eye techniques are a gift Shijinamura gave me with his life. If only my earth wall hadn't crumbled in the explosion. If I had anticipated Kirigakure's counterattack before leaving. These pupil techniques are well-deserved. The abilities of these eyes seem to reflect my regrets from that time." Shintaro also found it extraordinary that the eye abilities were actually related to the emotions felt when the eyes were awakened. Fugaku's face showed signs of exhaustion, as if he had aged instantly. He felt the tears on his face deeply, and his regret was evident. Seeing the situation, Shintaro tactfully left, leaving Fugaku alone in the tent to rest. News of the great victory on the Eastern Front was brought to Konoha by Shikaku. In the Hokage's office, Hiruzen convened an emergency meeting specifically for this issue. The other participants in the meeting were his 3 old friends, Shimura Danzo, Midokado Hamura, and Yuditane Koharu. Hiruzen wore the Hokage hat and held a pipe in his mouth without speaking. Danzo, seeing the silence of the group, spoke up with a grim expression. "Sarutobi, I told you not to let the Uchiha clan participate in the war. Now it's too late to regret." This time, the Uchiha clan's performance on the Eastern Front was completely unexpected. It has only increased the Uchiha clan's reputation in the village. Now the Uchiha clan is becoming even harder to control. If you knew this, you should have listened to my advice. Danzo was about to say more, but Koharu interrupted him. "Enough, Danzo. We're not here to listen to your complaints." A glint of light flashed under Hamura's glasses, and he spoke in a deep voice. "The Uchiha clan should be called back. The reason is that the village's defenses are empty and need strengthening." "What about Uchiha Shintaro? He is not part of the police force, but he played a significant role in this war. It's difficult to handle." Koharu then brought up Shintaro, the main contributor to the Eastern Front War. Hamura adjusted his glasses and said with strategic confidence, "Promote him to a command level and send him to the Land of Rain." "The Land of Rain?" Koharu turned to look at Hamura. "Yes, that's the battlefield between Iwagakure and Sunagakure. Iwagakure, Sunagakure, and Hanzo are all involved in a complex situation there. I don't expect him to make any waves there. We just need to keep him quiet for a while. The fame and attention will fade." Hamura explained his thoughts. Danzo was very dissatisfied with this. You are too clever. What if Uchiha Shintaro seizes the opportunity to earn more merit? Wouldn't he be even harder to control? The Land of Rain is a mixed battlefield. No matter how strong he is just a teenager. What trouble can he cause? Besides, it will be fine as long as we don't give him enough troops. Hamura was very confident in his strategy. I think it would be better to send Uchiha Shintaro to the most dangerous battlefield and take the opportunity to get rid of this kid. Otherwise, he will become a problem for Konoha sooner or later. Danzo's thoughts were even more sinister. It could be said that Danzo had no goodwill towards Uchiha Shintaro at all. Coupled with his wariness towards the Uchiha, Shintaro was already on his list of threats. Danzo, you're going too far. After all, Shintaro is a Konoha ninja. Hiruzen finally spoke. I am merely carrying out the will of the second Hokage to eliminate threats to Konoha. Danzo spoke righteously, as if he were the embodiment of justice. No need to say more. I have decided to call back the Uchiha clan to consolidate the defenses of Konoha village and order Uchiha Shintaro to lead troops to the Land of Rain. He will lead 500 men to the Land of Rain and guard the gateway to the Fire Nation. Hiruzen immediately announced his decision. Hamura and Koharu had no objections. Shimura Danzo said angrily, "You will regret this, Sarutobi." "Danzo, I am a Hokage." Hiruzen spoke calmly, then stood up and turned around, looking at Konoha village outside the window without saying a word. Danzo was again frustrated by the word Hokage and immediately slammed the door and left. Hamura and Koharu relayed the orders on behalf of the Hokage. The news quickly spread to the Eastern Front. Shikaku announced the Hokage's orders. "Fugaku, these are the Hokage's orders. Shikaku initially thought Fugaku's reaction would be very intense. After all, the Uchiha clan was being called back after making great contributions to Konoha without any reward. However, Fugaku accepted the orders very calmly. "It's fine. I will take the Uchiha clan back tomorrow, and I'll leave this place to you." Fugaku patted Shikaku on the shoulder and said. Shikaku glanced at Fugaku's hand on his shoulder, then looked at Fugaku and said, "I don't want to see the Uchiha clan treated unfairly. I will appeal to the Hokage." Fugaku let go and said, "No need. It is the Uchiha clan's duty to protect Konoha. The Hokage is doing the right thing." Shikaku nodded, said nothing, and turned to find Shintaro. He happened to meet him outside the camp. "Shintaro, these are your orders." He handed the transfer order to Shintaro and said, "You are now in command, so you must act more carefully." Shintaro accepted the order and smiled. "Don't worry, Shikaku-sensei. I'm not a child anymore." Hearing this, Shikaku felt relieved and gave further instructions. In a land of rain, Sunagakure and Iwagakure are mostly fighting. It's best for Konoha not to get involved. We are not seeking merit, but also not seeking fault. You also know, the Uchiha clan is being watched closely these days." Shikaku said and left. Shintaro watched Shikaku's back and thought, "Shikaku-sensei, which side will you stand on?" He pondered for a long time, then turned and entered the camp. Fugaku was seen sitting with his head raised, his left eye tightly closed, and red blood tears streaming down. Shintaro stepped forward and handed over a piece of paper, seeing that Fugaku's eye power had been exhausted. "Captain, did you just use Deiko Kutten?" Fugaku wiped away the blood and tears, opened his red left eye, and said hoarsely, "Yes, I didn't expect that after using it a few times, the burden would be so heavy, I feel my vision is a bit blurry." "What did you see with this eye?" Shintaro asked. "I saw the destruction of Konoha, and we both became rogue ninjas, haha." Fugaku suddenly laughed at himself, completely unlike his usual self. But soon, his expression turned to despair. "I concluded a future where we took advantage of the village's lack of defense to launch a coup. The result was as I just said. All clan members died, and only we survived. Then the other 4 great nations saw the change in Konoha and collectively destroyed Konoha. I have concluded several times, and the best result is the annihilation of the entire Uchiha clan." "Shintaro, will the Uchiha clan really be destroyed?" Fugaku asked with a painful look on his face, covering his eyes. Shintaro's reaction was very calm, and he said, "Captain, the future you see may not be accurate. I will change the fate of the Uchiha clan." 122. Land of Rain. Hearing this, Fugaku saw Shintaro's serious gaze and unconsciously chose to trust him. "Shintaro, sometimes I sigh. Shimizu truly gave birth to a good son. The next day, Fugaku took the other Uchiha clan members back to the village, while Shintaro led 500 troops, freed from the Eastern Front, to the Land of Rain. This time, Asuma, Tetsuo, and Hamasu could no longer follow Shintaro. Asuma was summoned back to the village by the Hokage, and the other two, also members of the Uchiha clan, were forcibly recalled to Konoha. Shintaro led the 500 soldiers alone to the Land of Rain in the northwest of the Land of Fire. He seemed in no hurry, making the diagonal journey across the Land of Fire even longer. First, the troops went to replenish their equipment and sufficient food, then slowly and leisurely arrived in the Land of Rain. At the border of the Land of Fire, several Konoha ninjas were assigned to greet the troops. "Jonin Shintaro, I am Misura Hazaki. I will be responsible for safeguarding you this time," a bearded middle-aged ninja said politely. Hazaki's posture was lower than Shintaro's. After all, Shintaro was now a dazzling star in Konoha after the Yellow Flash. This place was initially guarded by our northwestern defense line. We only guard the border and haven't entered the Land of Rain, but we have a map drawn by our scouts, though it only covers part of the Land of Rain. As for the placement of a Wagakure and Sunagakure ninjas in the Land of Rain, we don't even know. We can't help much, so please forgive me. Shintaro calmly took the map and thanked him. "Thank you very much. This is enough." After saying this, he began to command the troops to enter the Land of Rain. Hazaki looked at Shintaro's back and said to his subordinates, "Uchiha Shintaro is the most dazzling young man in Konoha in recent years. If our position is attacked in the future, we will come to him for help. This is also Hokage-sama's intention." The subordinates nodded. After all, there was no sense of security in the weak northwestern defense line. Recently, another 1,000 troops from the northwestern defense line were taken away and sent to the Western Front battlefield of Sunagakure. Hazaki felt like he was walking on thin steel plates with the big stone of a Wagakure over his head. The bet now was that a Wagakure would not really fall and hit this gap. If something really happens, only the Land of Rain can provide rescue. There is also the Yellow Flash. Hazaki felt lucky to find a savior again. Shintaro looked at the sky. There were dark clouds ahead, as if it was about to rain heavily. On the ground, it hadn't even completely dried yet. If an ordinary person stepped on it, clear mud marks would be visible. However, he activated Infinity automatically, so naturally, he didn't have to worry about getting dirty. The troops behind them were also fully prepared. At least they wouldn't turn into drowned rats once they reached the Land of Rain. Shintaro led his troops directly to Amigakure village marked on the map. On the way, heavy rain poured down. Raindrops fell on Shintaro's body and just stopped, accumulating more and more, almost forming a curtain of water. The surrounding ninjas were all amazed at this sight. "Let's go to the village first and make repairs." Although Shintaro himself wasn't hurt in the heavy rain, he saw that the Konoha ninjas couldn't withstand all the rain despite wearing raincoats. He led the troops to the village ahead. When the villagers saw the ninjas, they locked their doors and closed their windows. One could see the impact of the war on this country. The villagers avoided ninjas as if they were monsters. These were Konoha ninjas with relatively good reputations. Shintaro looked at the sky and wondered why it rained so heavily in the Land of Rain. Suddenly, an idea struck him. Since the rain comes from the dark clouds, then I just want to disperse the dark clouds. He thought of this and flew into the air in front of the Konoha ninjas. Limitless technique allowed him to stand in the incorporeal air, achieving the effect of flying. Shintaro also used blue to speed up his flight and quickly ascended into the sky. The Konoha ninjas below all raised their heads, staring at him in silence, regardless of the rain. "Is this a god?" The Konoha ninjas began to wonder if Shintaro, only 12 years old, was the reincarnation of a god. Shintaro stood under the dark clouds, raised his hand, and pointed at the dark clouds above his head. Cursed technique lapse, blue. A blue orb pierced the dark clouds, devouring the dark clouds in the sky. The sky was like a blue eraser, erasing the originally dark sky bit by bit. The thick dark clouds now gathered into one. Shintaro then changed his movement, pointing two fingers at the dark clouds and shooting out. He knocked the dark clouds high into the sky. Shintaro extended his palm again, emitting a coin-sized purple and shooting it. With a shocking air explosion, the dark clouds immediately disappeared. A large amount of rain fell instantly, and the water poured down like a waterfall. The heavy rain washed away the villagers' roofs, but fortunately, the houses here were rainproof, so they didn't get washed away. After the rain, the sky cleared, and some curious villagers looked up and saw Shintaro's figure. A god. With a thud, a villager knelt down and worshipped. Later, many villagers followed, all worshipping Shintaro, who changed the weather. After all, in the eyes of these villagers, the only one who could easily change the weather in the land of rain was a god. Of course, the Konoha ninjas were not as naive as ordinary villagers, but they all greatly admired Shintaro. Shintaro didn't care about the worship and admiration of these people. He came to the troops and said, "I have stopped the rain. Now we can continue our journey." A ninja asked, "Captain Shintaro, what will we do now?" Shintaro turned around, pointed forward, and said, "Of course, I will visit the ruler of the land of rain, Salamander Hanzo." He continued to move forward with his troops. His act of flying into the sky and dispersing the dark clouds was also witnessed, and soon the news reached Hanzo in Amigakure village. What? Flying into the sky and dispersing the dark clouds. Are you sure that's true? It's not fake news sent by Konoha ninjas, right? Wearing a mask and sitting on the tatami behind the screen, Hanzo received the news. His first reaction was to think it was bragging from a Konoha ninja, but the Amigakure ninja who came to report the news said, "It is true. I saw it with my own eyes. It is said that the local villagers worship Uchiha Shintaro as a god." A god. Hanzo's eyes changed, and he murmured, "What does Konoha want to do if he comes to us?" He was fundamentally suspicious, and as he got older, he was surrounded by guards on rotation all the time. He hated all threats, and Shintaro, worshipped as a god by the villagers, naturally became one of those threats. Report to Hanzo-sama. The Konoha ninjas request an audience. 123. Visiting Hanzo Amigakure village. At the gate, the Konoha forces were stopped by guards with Amigakure forehead protectors and gas masks. "I am Heiji who hides from the rain, and I am Hanzo-sama's right-hand man." Shintaro smiled upon hearing this and said, "Heiji who hides from the rain, that's quite an interesting nickname. Don't you have to hide from the rain every day in the land of rain?" The right and left hands are better described as pinky fingers. Heiji didn't feel ashamed or angry at all. He scratched his head and said, "Actually, they're making fun of me with that nickname. I just want to build a relationship with Hanzo-sama. You're honest, but still, he's the demigod, and his association with you might intimidate many." Shintaro found the man in front of him a bit amusing. "Yes, we all greatly respect Hanzo-sama." When Heiji spoke of Hanzo, his eyes were filled with admiration. Hanzo had been renowned for a long time and was known as the demigod of the ninja world. The last person to have the title god, and his nickname was the god of shinobi, the first Hokage, Senju Hashirama. Shintaro did some homework before coming to the land of rain and learned some information about Hanzo. Hanzo's water-style ninjutsu was very strong, and he was skilled in using poison. He had a summoning animal named Abuse. There was a poison sac in Hanzo's body that emitted poisonous gas even when he breathed. Therefore, Amigakure ninjas wore masks all year round, indicating the potency of Hanzo's poison gas. Shintaro chatted casually with Heiji and waited until the messenger arrived. Hanzo-sama has ordered that only one person be allowed to enter the village. After hearing this, Shintaro showed a wry smile. "I see. Heiji, your Hanzo-sama is very cautious." Heiji looked a bit embarrassed, but still defended. "Hanzo-sama is just taking necessary precautions." He led Shintaro alone to Hanzo's residence. Shintaro used his 6 eyes to see that there were hundreds of guards inside and outside the mansion, guarding layer upon layer. Therefore, his admiration for the so-called demigod human decreased. Being so afraid of death, yet still having courage as a hero in his old age. Shintaro could enter Hanzo's house only after a thorough search. Hanzo-sama, they have arrived, a guard announced behind a screen. Then a loud voice sounded, "Let him in." The guard turned to Shintaro, raised his hand, and said, "Please, just turn the screen." Shintaro nodded and stepped inside. Hanzo's appearance was similar to Shintaro's imagination. He indeed looked like a majestic hero. His strength was also very strong. According to the Six Eyes observation, he was at least at the same level as the third Hokage, both being the pinnacle of conventional ninja power. It seemed that Hanzo's weakening was not due to his strength, but his mentality. Konoha ninja, Uchiha Shintaro visiting. Shintaro's tone was quite polite, at least on the surface. "So, you're Uchiha Shintaro. Sit down." Hanzo looked at Shintaro with his eyes, and Shintaro could see doubt and vigilance in the other's eyes. Shintaro's reputation was now quite well known in the ninja world. "Have you heard of my name, Hanzo-sama?" Shintaro sat down and smiled. The new strongman in Konoha, who is only 12 years old, Uchiha Shintaro, is very famous in the ninja world. Hanzo looked at him and said, "You came to the land of rain and dispersed dark clouds to change the weather. Do you perhaps fancy the fake title of demigod above me?" Hanzo-sama is joking. Shintaro shook his head slightly. "I don't intend to be involved under the name of demigod. The primary purpose of coming here this time is to visit Hanzo-sama. After all, the land of rain is your territory. I would like to inquire about information along the way." Hanzo's eyes sharpened, and he ignored the first part of Shintaro's polite words, focusing only on the word intelligence. "What information?" "Don't worry. Konoha's arrival in the land of rain is not to target Amigakure, but to target the other two forces, Sunagakure and Awagakure." Shintaro revealed Konoha's purpose to alleviate Hanzo's concerns. Hanzo's eyes softened a bit, and he said, "Oh, Konoha, Sunagakure, and Awagakure all gathered in the land of rain. It's really lively. This reminds me of the last Ninja War." Hanzo was referring to the Second Ninja World War. One of the main battlefields at that time was the land of rain. Amigakure village at that time was different from the current village adhering to neutrality. At that time, Amigakure village boldly entered the war as a small country. The famous name of Konoha Sannin was obtained by Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and Tsunade when they fought Hanzo at that time. This time is naturally different from before, Shintaro said with a smile. "What's different?" Hanzo frowned and stared at him. "This time, Konoha and Amigakure are not enemies, but allies." Shintaro said something that made Hanzo stunned. Hanzo showed a thoughtful expression. He was very aware of Konoha's strength and heritage. Otherwise, he wouldn't have betrayed Konoha in the end and let the three ninjas go during the last ninja war. "It's good to form an alliance with Konoha, but what's the cost?" Shintaro replied, "There's no cost. We only need the relevant information about Sunagakure and Awagakure. In return, Konoha will help Amigakure village to deal with the rogue ninjas of Sunagakure and Awagakure in the land of rain. Along the way, I observed that the people of the land of rain seemed to be suffering from a war." Hanzo certainly couldn't be persuaded by Shintaro's words alone. "What you said sounds nice, but Amigakure village this time adheres to neutrality. If we form an alliance with Konoha, it will not be popular." Hanzo expressed his thoughts. The land of rain was squeezed between three major countries, which was a kind of helplessness. During the last Ninja World War, Hanzo was very ambitious and wanted to drive the ninjas of the three great nations out of his country alone. However, reality dealt him a big blow. Although his name as demigod became louder during the war, it couldn't change the reality that people in small countries suffered during the war. This was also one of the reasons why Hanzo's morale was destroyed and he gradually lost his heroic spirit. If Hanzo-sama is worried, we in Konoha can accept the petition. Please wait patiently in Amigakure village. We will see in a few days that Konoha's power is enough to suppress the situation in the land of rain." Shintaro's eyes were so bright that Hanzo was stunned for a moment. However, Sunagakure and Awagakure both have thousands of troops, while Konoha's troops seem insufficient, Hanzo said after a moment. Hearing this, Shintaro added, and my power. Hanzo was silent for a while, then raised his head and made a decision. Okay, I need to verify it once. Hanzo said his decision. I will secretly hand over some information to Konoha. If Konoha can prove what you said, Amage Cure Village will be willing to ally with Konoha. Shintaro stood up. It's a deal. Hanzo turned to the guard behind the screen and said, bring the latest information about Sunagakure and Awagakure and give it to Uchiha Shintaro. Thank you, Hanzo-sama, for your trust. After speaking, Shintaro walked out of the screen and left Amage Cure Village after receiving the information. Hanzo sat on the tatami and murmured, another great person has come out of Konoha. What a great country. 124. Akatsuki Shintaro exited Amage Cure with the acquired information. Captain Shintaro, are you alright? A Konoha ninja asked with concern. Even though these Konoha ninjas had all been brought by Shintaro from the southeastern defensive line, they were all aware of his strength. But still, Demigod had been renowned for a long time, and their expertise was in toxic gas, which was hard to guard against. Therefore, everyone was still somewhat worried about Shintaro going to the meeting alone. Shintaro waved his hand to show he was fine, then waved the information in his hand to the Konoha ninjas. Everyone, I've made a deal with Amage Cure, he said confidently. A straightforward Konoha ninja raised his hand and asked, but isn't that information written there? Shintaro laughed upon hearing this. Yes, but it's no different from an agreement. He then became serious and said to all the Konoha ninjas, let's move out and find a good location to set up camp. Everyone began to wonder where the so-called good location might be. Let's find a place between Sunagakure and Awagakure. Question marks seemed to appear above everyone's heads. After all, in most people's minds, being placed between the two forces was just bringing a lantern to the toilet and looking for death. But seeing Shintaro look so confident, everyone unconsciously believed in his decision. Don't worry, I promise. Nothing will happen to you. He reassured them. With his assurance, no one had any objections. Shintaro took out the intelligence map and began guiding the troops forward. The troops passed through Amage Cure, located in the center of the Land of Rain, and their destination was in the west of the Land of Rain. The outline of the Land of Rain resembled a tall boot. The body of the boot connected to the Land of Fire in the east, the heel to the west, and the Land of Wind and the Land of Earth to the north and south. According to intelligence, Sunagakure and Awagakure were facing off in the middle of the boot. The Konoha troops moved toward their destination. In a small village in the west of the Land of Rain, outside the village, there were many large holes with black smoke inside, and some broken ninja tools stuck in them, stained with blood. There were various unnatural protrusions and collapses on the ground, as well as various signs of the ground being cut. In the village, ruins and broken walls were scattered all over, looking more tragic than the dilapidated scene outside the village. The sounds of the villagers' cries, the wails of children who lost their parents, and the desperate calls for relatives mixed and couldn't be heard clearly. At this moment, a group of chaotic footsteps came from the village gate. Conan, bring some people to treat the wounded. Nagato, lead people with me to rescue the villagers trapped in the rubble. A handsome young man with orange hair was giving serious instructions to the people behind him. The group was wearing uniform black cloaks, Amage Cure forehead protectors, gray belts, and ninja tool pouches tied behind their waists. To the left of the orange-haired youth was a young woman with blue hair, round eyes, orange pupils, and a beautiful appearance. To his right was a red-haired young man with long bangs covering his eyes, pale skin, and restrained handsomeness. The two were shocked by the tragedy before them and didn't respond for a moment. The orange-haired youth turned left and right and reminded them again. Conan, Nagato, hurry up. Only then did the blue-haired woman named Conan and the red-haired young man named Nagato react. Understood, Yahiko. Yahiko, Conan, and Nagato were the leaders of this young ninja team. Everyone took action. Conan led a group of people to an open space in the village, where many injured people were being moved by the villagers. How many are injured? Conan asked anxiously. However, neither the wounded villagers nor the regular villagers responded, looking at the ninja group indifferently. because it was the ninja who caused all this chaos. Although they were from other countries, to the villagers, there was no difference among ninjas. It's just that the patterns on the forehead protectors were different. Even the villagers didn't like the Amigay-Cure ninjas, who had 4 vertical lines engraved on their forehead protectors symbolizing Amigay-Cure. After all, the village's mission was to protect the country. But Amigay-Cure in the Land of Rain remained neutral, allowing ninjas from other countries to burn, kill, and loot in the country, turning the human world into a battlefield. Conan shouted quickly upon seeing this. "We are Akatsuki, an organization of the people of the Land of Rain. We know that the people of the Land of Rain have been destroyed by war and plunged into darkness. So we are determined to be the dawn that changes this country and this world. Please believe in us." Conan's sincere words rang in the ears of every conscious villager. The villagers were silent for a long time, and long-form concepts were hard to change with a few words. But not everyone was indifferent. 45 people injured, 7 of whom are near death. A young man provided specific injury numbers. "Thank you." Conan bowed deeply, then directed the ninjas behind her to treat the seriously wounded first. On the other side, Yahiko and Nagato led a group of Akatsuki ninjas to start digging out the village ruins. "Kid, don't cry. Are your parents trapped in this house?" Yahiko knelt down and comforted a small child standing and crying. His voice was gentle and calm, with a magical power that made people want to listen to him. This magic power also worked for panicked children. The child stopped crying a little, sobbed, and nodded. Yahiko then stood up and said to Nagato next to him, "I'll use wind element to blow off the top tiles. Then we'll move these bricks together." Nagato nodded, and Yahiko clasped his hands together. A strong wind blew from Yahiko's palms, sweeping forward, blowing all the tiles on top of the ruins back. Nagato rushed forward, forcibly lifting part of the ceiling and throwing it aside. Yahiko also joined in, and they both dug through the rubble together. "Yahiko, they seem to be alive." Nagato turned his head, and the wind blew his bangs, revealing a pair of strange eyes. His eyes were purple, with circle patterns, very mysterious. Yahiko was delighted to hear this, and he and Nagato sped up the digging. As the rescue continued, Yahiko soon heard groans and cries. Nagato moved a slanted cement slab, and a couple was hiding underneath. It turned out the couple hid in a triangular safe zone in the corner and escaped. But the husband's leg was flattened by the stone slab. The husband fainted from the pain, leaning against the wall and groaning unconsciously, while the wife hugged him and cried. "It's okay, we have medical ninjas who can treat you." Yahiko stepped forward and helped the wife stand up, while Nagato carried the husband out of the ruins to find a medical ninja for treatment. The child stepped over the rubble and ran to his mother, throwing himself into her arms. The mother and child were reunited. Yahiko helped the mother and child settle in the open space, and the husband also received treatment. At least his life was saved. Seeing this, he sighed in relief and was about to rescue the victims in the next house. At this moment, an Akatsuki ninja ran in panic from outside the village. "Leader Yahiko, a group of Konoha ninjas is heading towards us and is almost at the door. 125, Rinnegan and 6 Eyes Konoha." Yahiko's expression suddenly turned serious. The Konoha ninja arrived at this moment, and they might have come with ill intentions. "Yahiko, what should we do now? Should we use Jiraiya-sensei's name to negotiate?" Conan put down the work she was doing and instructed her subordinates to take over. She ran towards Yahiko and suggested. Yahiko shook his head and said, "Very few people know that Jiraiya-sensei stayed to teach us. I fear the Konoha ninja won't believe it, and I also worry this will bring trouble to Jiraiya-sensei." It turns out Yahiko, Conan, and Nagato were taught by Jiraiya sometime after the last ninja war, and they were considered Jiraiya's disciples living abroad. However, Yahiko had no intention of using this relationship to negotiate with Konoha. Instead, he ordered, "Everyone prepare for battle. I will negotiate, but be ready for the worst. Everyone, please remember to do your best to protect the villagers." Nagato, who always followed Yahiko's orders, stood up at this moment, opened his arms to stop him, and said earnestly, "Yahiko, we can't take the risk. Let's run." The Konoha ninja might not attack the village. It took us a lot of effort to develop into what we are now. If we start a fight, our efforts over the past few years will be in vain. So let's run. Nagato's eyes stared straight at Yahiko, trying to stop him. Yahiko was about to say something when a figure fell from the sky. It was a handsome, white-haired boy, none other than Uchiha Shintaro. Shintaro fell from the sky and approached Nagato. He touched his chin, looked at Nagato, and said, "I don't understand. Why would you choose to run away? What a waste of resources," he said, smiling and shaking his head. Nagato was initially shocked by the other's movement of falling from the sky. Then he took out his kunai warily and assumed a defensive posture, simultaneously asking in confusion, "What do you mean?" Shintaro pointed to his blue eyes. "Your eyes contain quite strong power. If we don't use it for battle, wouldn't that be a waste of resources?" Shintaro explained, his eyes filled with a desire to fight. He hadn't felt this excited to fight in a long time. It seemed that since the Battle of Hachibi, he had become increasingly uninterested in subsequent battles. Until now, he met a pair of eyes that were quite interesting. The power contained in these eyes was somewhat similar to Fugaku's Mangekyo Sharingan, but their pupil power was even far greater compared to the Mangekyo Sharingan. Shintaro wanted to test whether the eyes of the red-haired youth in front of him were stronger, or if his own 6 eyes were stronger. At this moment, Yahiko ran and stood between the two of them. "We are ninjas from the Akatsuki organization in the Land of Rain. We have no ill intentions towards Konoha, and we do not intend to stop you. We are here only to help the villagers. Please show your kindness." His tone was humble and his attitude sincere. Shintaro pushed him aside and said, "Just do your business. I want to see his eyes." He pointed to Nagato. Nagato stepped forward and said, "As long as you don't attack the villagers and the other members of our Akatsuki organization, I promise you." "Nagato." Yahiko looked at him anxiously. Shintaro looked around and felt that the members of the Akatsuki organization in front of him were indeed interesting. Even the village of Amigakure cowered in the village and watched. This simple organization dared to enter the battlefield of a big country to save civilians. "As long as you satisfy me, I won't hurt them." Shintaro raised his hand and ordered the Konoha ninja who had entered the village to retreat. Nagato saw him being serious, so he swallowed and nodded. Both Yahiko and Konan wanted to prevent him. After all, the young man in front of them could fly just like that, which was enough to show that he was very strong. Nagato had never engaged in a fight, so Yahiko and Konan were naturally afraid their comrade would be injured or even die. But Nagato was very determined to protect his friends. The three of them had a deep friendship as close friends. Shintaro felt like the type of villain that often appears in dramas, the type that exploits the safety of their friends to force the kind-hearted protagonist to submit. He chuckled and asked, "Have you made up your mind?" Nagato frowned and said seriously, "Let's go." Shintaro then grabbed Nagato by the collar and flew into the air. Upon reaching an open space outside the village, Shintaro said, "Your eyes should also have pupil techniques, right?" Based on the Mangekyo Sharingan's pupil techniques, he concluded that the eyes in front of him should also have pupil techniques. "What is a pupil technique?" Nagato looked confused. Shintaro explained, "A pupil technique is a special technique that uses your eyes as the source of its power." Upon hearing this, Nagato had a revelation. "So, its ability is a pupil technique, but I haven't mastered it yet." He began to hesitate in his heart. The development of his special eyes was very low, and he was still at the beginner stage. But when he thought about his friends, Nagato's eyes became determined. "All right, I'll show you." Shintaro became interested and nodded. "Step back a bit. I'm afraid of accidental injuries." The kind-hearted Nagato was still concerned about Shintaro's safety, the villain, which made Shintaro sigh deeply in his heart. "Don't worry, you can't hurt me," Shintaro said confidently. Nagato saw him not moving, so he took a few steps back. After all, the pupil technique he wanted to show was very powerful, but he didn't know the specific strength of the other party. He took a few steps back and took a deep breath. "I will begin," Nagato reminded again, then pushed his hands to both sides. The bangs on both sides of his cheeks lifted, and his eyes widened. Shinra Tensei, a strong repulsive force, came from all directions with Nagato as the center, and the ground sank into a large pit. This repulsive force was not visible to the naked eye, but the traces of the air being pushed away could be detected by Shintaro's 6 eyes, covering a radius of more than 10 meters. Nagato retracted his hands and panted. "That's it." Shintaro touched his chin with interest and praised. "Not bad." This technique was somewhat similar to the red move, but not the same. Although both were repulsive forces, the attack range of Shinra Tensei was centered on Nagato, while red compressed the repulsive force and released it forward. Shintaro compressed the energy burst with his 2 fingers, then pointed his finger at Nagato, with a red light flickering at the tip of his finger. "Prepare for this." Nagato was slightly panicked upon hearing this, but Shintaro didn't wait for his reaction and fired without a word. Shinra Tensei, his repulsive force hit the open space beside Nagato in the form of a beam and suddenly struck an invisible wall. Red and Shinra Tensei collided with each other, and in an instant, the air vibrated. The ground affected immediately collapsed, sending sand and stones flying. Nagato roared angrily, veins bulging on his pale neck. In the end, Red's force was exhausted and blown away, while Nagato was also sent flying diagonally. Shintaro approached him and extended a hand to help him up. "Interesting power, but it seems you haven't fully developed it. I hope you can give me a great combat experience in the future. My name is Uchiha Shintaro. You should remember this name," Shintaro said with a smile. He saw that Nagato was still immature at this time, but had great potential, so he decided to wait patiently until Nagato matured. Nagato asked hesitantly, "You won't attack our friends?" "I had no intention of taking action from the start." Shintaro spread his hands and said, "We just happened to pass by, and we need to hurry. Let's go." After that, Shintaro took Nagato back to the village and left with the troops. Akatsuki Organization. Nagato, Uchiha, Shintaro. Each side left a deep impression on the other. 126. One man in charge, however. The encounter with the Akatsuki Organization was just an episode in the journey. Shintaro led the Konoha troops past the village and continued their journey. The western part of the Land of Rain. On a hill, the Sunagakure ninja troops were stationed here. It rained all year round in the Land of Rain, so the troops were stationed in the mountains to avoid flooding. In the commander's tent, there was a familiar, beautiful figure to Shintaro, Pakura. A ninja entered the camp to report on the battle. Reporting to Pakura-sama, "One of our forces has engaged Iwagakure." Pakura stood up and asked, "How many are there?" "We have 100 men, and Iwagakure has 200. Hearing this, Pakura immediately left the camp. "Take 100 men with me to assist, while the rest continue to guard the defense line." Pakura's eyes were sharp, and she had the spirit of a heroine. Conflicts like this were common in the Land of Rain. Basically, Sunagakure and Iwagakure had a dozen per day, one every 7 days, and one per month. Conflicts involving hundreds of people could only be considered routine. Both sides had each stationed thousands of troops and maintained a certain intensity of war on the front lines. This was essentially a test for both Sunagakure and Iwagakure. Neither Sunagakure nor Iwagakure was the main enemy of the other. In this great ninja war, Sunagakure's main enemy was Konoha, while Iwagakure's main enemy was Kumogakure. Sunagakure and Konoha fought in the Land of Fire, with the momentum of a national-scale war. Iwagakure's previous sneak attack on Kumogakure's homeland resulted in the death of the third Raikage from exhaustion after a fierce battle for 3 days, and the two villages formed a deadly feud. Therefore, the main forces of the two countries would not be used against each other. However, if one party exposed its weaknesses, they would not hesitate to take action. Pakura rushed to the battlefield with 100 troops. Shikutin Kuchsat. She had just landed and arrived with 4 hot fireballs floating around her. At this moment, it was drizzling in the sky, and when the rain fell on the fireballs, it instantly evaporated into nothing. The fireballs produced by the scorch release would not be extinguished even in the rain. Instead, they would directly vaporize the raindrops. The evaporated moisture would condense in the cooling air, gradually forming a thin layer of water mist. Pakura rushed to one of the four-man teams from Iwagakure and waved the four fireballs. The fireballs easily hit the enemy at close range, instantly turning the four men into mummies. The charred and dried corpses lay lifeless in the drizzle. The scene was shocking. That's Pakura of the Scorch Release. Be careful. Focus your strength on defense. The Iwagakure ninjas immediately reacted, and Pakura's Scorch Release reputation was now even more formidable. Pakura was the hero of Sunagakure and the biggest enemy of Iwagakure on the Rain Country battlefield. The Iwagakure ninjas rallied one by one, and all kinds of earth spears, earth dragons, and earth bullets came from all directions. Pakura moved flexibly among the various attacks, and at the same time, she condensed several more fireballs. These fireballs, containing extremely high temperatures, not only served as deadly weapons, but could also act as absolute defense. Various attacks were powerless under such high temperatures, all turning into scorched earth and crumbling to pieces. As Iwagakure and Sunagakure were fighting, several voices suddenly came from a hillside beside the battlefield. Not bad. It's faster to cut trees with the wind release. Move it up and let the fire release ninjas dry the wood before building. Otherwise, it will rot easily. Remember to have the earth release ninjas dig drainage channels. I'll go down there and take a look. It seemed like a boy was directing some ninjas to build a camp. Pakura vaguely heard the voice and found it very familiar. She had a faint guess in her heart. No way. Is it really him? Hey, we've been waiting for you all. A white-haired boy walked out of the forest and came to the Sunagakure and Iwagakure battlefield, waving hello. It is him, Uchiha Shintaro. Pakura reacted strongly and immediately retreated from the battlefield, while ordering the Sunagakure troops to stop. The troops on both sides didn't know why, but they stopped anyway. Seeing this, Shintaro stood up and said, "Everyone, I have something to announce. Konoha is currently stationed on this mountain. While you're fighting, don't accidentally hurt us." The ninjas on the battlefield looked at each other, their eyes seemingly saying, "Is he crazy?" Pakura glanced at the mountaintop. There was a lot of movement inside, and many trees had been cut down, indicating the other party wasn't lying. After careful consideration, Pakura announced, "Retreat. Don't go. Pakura, we're old acquaintances. Why don't we say hello when we meet?" Shintaro said to Pakura with a smile. Pakura rolled her eyes at Shintaro and ignored him. The other party clearly had good strength, and Konoha's intentions were unclear, so she didn't dare to continue the fight. But the Iwagakure ninjas seemed not to recognize Shintaro. After the Sunagakure ninjas retreated, the Iwagakure ninjas surrounded them. "Konoha ninjas are also our enemies. Everyone, follow me." A ninja shouted and rushed forward. Konoha and Iwagakure had been enemies for many years, with hostility spanning two great ninja wars. And now Shintaro was involved in the fight between Sunagakure and Iwagakure, so it was natural to launch a siege. Seeing this, Shintaro retracted his friendly smile and looked coldly at the Iwagakure ninjas. Shintaro's tone was calm, as if stating an already determined fact. Curse technique lapse. He withdrew with one hand, and a blue flash appeared. The Iwagakure ninjas were pulled by a tremendous force and slammed into the hillside behind, turning into a pool of flesh. The Iwagakure troops were instantly terrified. Combined ninjutsu. Use combined ninjutsu quickly. Ninjutsu, like Earth Release, which relies on scale for damage, is highly suitable for combined execution, a specialty of Iwagakure ninjas. Doton, Banri Dorihiki. Doton, Awadep, no Jutsu. The Iwagakure ninjas used high and thick stone walls to isolate Shintaro in front of them, while simultaneously launching stone bullets behind the wall. The stone bullets gradually expanded in the air, and their numbers were astonishing. Shintaro was quickly buried by the stone bullets. At this moment, A red flash emerged from the gap between the piles of stone bullets, spreading in all directions. Curse technique reversal. Red. A sudden red light appeared, and the mountain of stones exploded instantly, the thick stone walls collapsing in an instant. The impact brought large boulders crashing down on many unfortunate Iwagakure ninjas, like soldiers struck by bullets on the battlefield, crushed into mincemeat. These successive deaths were tragic, and Shintaro remained unscathed. The inner defenses of the Iwagakure ninjas collapsed immediately. He's a monster. Run. We don't stand a chance. Could he be the white-haired demon eye? No matter who he is, just run. Finally, after Kumogakure and Kirigakure, the Iwagakure ninjas also truly felt the power of the white-haired demon eye. Facing the fleeing Iwagakure ninjas, Shintaro calmly opened his hand, and a dark spiral ball the size of a coin slowly formed. The ball gradually grew larger, eventually reaching the size of a rubber ball. The chakra condensed in such a ball was thousands of times that of an ordinary Rasengan, and Shintaro also needed to use his 6 eyes at full power to use it. The ball moved to his fingertip. He raised his hand and pointed it forward, making the same hand gesture as when using red. Hollow technique, purple. A red flash exploded, and the pitch-black ball containing terrifying power was instantly propelled out. Countless raindrops shot through the air, forming visible trails to the naked eye, and fell into the scattered crowd. The Iwagakure troops were utterly destroyed. 127. Sit and watch Pakura's performance in this way. Konoha joined the battle in the Land of Rain. Sunagakure, Iwagakure, and Amagakure were all confused. Even the higher-ups in Konoha were baffled. Konoha set up camp on a hillside between Sunagakure and Iwagakure, and only Shintaro fought against the Iwagakure forces at the beginning and destroyed them together. Besides that, Konoha did nothing. After the Konoha ninja spent a few days building the camp, there was no movement at all, as if they were on vacation in the Land of Rain. A watchtower was erected on the mountain, with complete facilities and a wide view, overlooking the entire battlefield. Shintaro's favorite thing every day was to climb up and enjoy the view. If he faced rainy weather with poor visibility, he could also fly up to manually disperse the dark clouds. Sunagakure and Iwagakure were both afraid of Konoha's and Shintaro's strength, and they even stopped fighting altogether in the past few days. News soon spread in Amagakure village, announcing that Amagakure village had formed an alliance with Konoha and issued a statement prohibiting war from affecting civilians. This wave of operations made Sunagakure and Iwagakure even more restrained. Although Amagakure village is a small country, its strength is not weak. This was proven by Hanzo in the last Great Ninja War. Moreover, this time they joined forces with Konoha. At least the sense of oppression in 3/3 of the Land of Rain was still sufficient. On this day, Shintaro went to the watchtower as usual to enjoy the scenery. Today was a rare good weather day in the Land of Rain, with clear skies and even a bit of heat. He was leaning on a rocking chair, enjoying the comfortable wind at a high altitude, when he saw someone below. Standing at the edge of the watchtower and looking down, he saw that he was delivering a message. Captain Shintaro, this is a letter from Konoha. The ninja below the tower shouted loudly. Shintaro raised his hand and sucked up the letter, opened it, and saw that the letter was written by Hiruzen for him. The letter first praised Shintaro's actions in the Land of Rain, then switched topics, criticizing his unauthorized actions and requesting the troops not to act recklessly again. Shintaro had anticipated the reaction of the Konoha higher-ups and casually put the letter down. He initially had no intention of taking action. The Land of Rain was now in a difficult balance, and he only intended to maintain that peace. Since the higher-ups didn't want to see him active again, Shintaro would retire in the Land of Rain and focus on being compliant. He leaned back in the chair while joking. After a while, he slowly stood up and looked into the distance with a surprised expression. What is this? He saw almost the entire Sunagakure force attacking, heading towards the Iwagakure defense line under Pakura's leadership. Shintaro touched his chin and observed for a while, then sat back casually. So that's it. He worried that Sunagakir's top management was dissatisfied with the current situation and planned to test it to see if they could break the deadlock. Sunagakir didn't dare to attack Konoha, which had joined forces with Amagakure village. So they chose Iwagakure and bet that Konoha would not take action. Shintaro actually didn't plan to take action, but he was ready to watch the show. Pakura's figure was always clearly visible, especially from a high place where he could see Pakura's high and straight chest. Shintaro clicked his mouth, wishing in his heart that Kurenai could grow that big. Pakura rushed forward and suddenly felt a chill. She looked in Shintaro's direction from somewhere, but she could only see the watchtower and the white hair looming in the distance. Pakura frowned and glanced in that direction. Then she turned around and continued on her way. She wasn't in the mood to think about all this. The newly appointed 4th Kazekage had issued an order asking her to attack the Iwagakure positions as a final assault. If this battle failed, they would withdraw their forces to defend and move the excess troops to the Fire Country battlefield. Although Sunagakure was also one of the 5 great ninja villages, its foundation was not as good as Iwagakure and Konoha. It had a shortage of troops and certainly could not spend too many troops in a land of rain. Of course, this final assault was a dangerous move. Whether it succeeded or not, it put Pakura in a dangerous situation. Shintaro looked at Pakura's back and felt that the other situation was somewhat similar to his, as they were both not trusted by their superiors. Shintaro sat, looking in the direction Sunagakure was heading, and thought of something. Of course, the entire Sunagakure force couldn't hide from Iwagakure's investigation. The Sunagakure forces were stopped on their way. Moreover, Iwagakure had built a simple assault, and the war between the two sides was about to begin. Pakura was still fierce in the battle, leading and almost unstoppable with her scorching element. But Iwagakure was not without experts. A man with brown hair and blue eyes and a pointed head jumped from behind, landed, and punched the ground. Bakutan Jiraken. A violent explosion erupted instantly, smashing the ground into pieces. The gravel struck forward at high speed, piercing the sky with astonishing power. This person was a member of the explosion corps of Iwagakure village, known as Gari. The so-called explosive element was to concentrate explosive release chakra on the fist. Once it touched the enemy or other objects, this chakra could be injected into it and exploded. Its destructive power was quite astonishing. In close combat, Gari could almost lock the battle as long as he could touch the enemy, and long-range attacks could also be released indirectly by exploding the ground like just now. Several sand ninjas around Pakura were hit by the flying stones, and the unlucky ones died instantly. Pakura used fireballs to protect her body and blocked the incoming attack. Pakura and Gari fought against each other. Their strengths were almost the same. Both were elite jonin or higher, and they both mastered lethal moves. This made the battle destined to be very intense. Shintaro took out a watermelon from the drawer and ate it while watching the show. Gari raised his fist across the damaged ground and attacked Pakura, his fist waving in the air, creating a strong wind. Pakura dodged backward, and at the same time, she waved 6 fireballs, and the fireballs flew towards Gari in the air. Seeing that the situation was not good, Gari took a step back and immediately distanced himself. The position he was standing at was instantly burned to ashes by the fireballs falling from the sky. The other fireballs made a big circle and continued to fly towards Gari, burning the air. Gari ran backward, dodging left and right, and took a few steps to duck behind the earth flow wall released by the Iwagakure ninja on the battlefield. Landmine fists hit the earth flow wall, causing the earth flow wall to explode into several stones and fly forward, just in time to collide with the fireballs. The stones were shattered by the fireballs, but the fireballs also lost their power. Shintaro ate watermelon and sat watching Pakura's performance, thinking in his heart, a very suitable opponent. Pakura and Gari had very close strengths and were wary of each other, so Shintaro concluded that this battle might be a stalemate. Both sides might reach a deadlock. The result was indeed as Shintaro expected. Pakura and Gari fought fiercely for a long time. At this time, the Sunagakure forces were about to be defeated. Both sides had equal strength, but one side was defending and the other was attacking. Of course, the situation favored the defending side and the people. Seeing this, Pakura had no choice but to retreat reluctantly. Sunagakure's assault failed, but Shintaro watched a good show from the watchtower. 128. The Iwagakure movement Pakura led her troops to retreat, and the great show ended. Shintaro placed the unfinished watermelon in his hand, jumped straight from the towering watchtower, and then landed on the ground. This was the last show he watched on this battlefield. What followed was an 8-month war. The 4 villages of Sunagakure, Iwagakure, Konoha, and Amagakure sent troops, but they couldn't start a fight. During this period, the situation in the ninja world was changing, but it didn't affect the Land of Rain at all. Sunagakure was still fighting life and death with Konoha in the Land of Fire. Iwagakure was constantly at odds with Kumogakure. Konoha was still fighting on both the eastern and western fronts, and the Land of Rain barely managed to maintain peace among these major powers. Hanzo had never been so grateful for the alliance he achieved with Konoha. At this point, the momentum of the Ninja World War seemed to be coming to an end. All the countries seemed no longer capable of continuing the war. Sunagakure had almost exhausted all its soldiers in search of a decisive battle with Konoha. Iwagakure and Kumogakure were at a stalemate, and Konoha was very passive while fighting on both sides. In response to the Land of Rain, Sunagakure withdrew a large number of troops, and Pakura was transferred to compete with the Kirigakure ninja. Iwagakure seemed to be thinking of retreating recently. Although Shintaro stood still, he wasn't sitting in the camp eating and waiting for death. Captain Shintaro, the information is here. Shintaro put down his pen and looked ahead. He had just replied to Kurenai. They hadn't met for a long time, so they usually communicated by letter. But the letter could be written later, as information was certainly more important right now. Bring it here. Shintaro took the information. Even though he didn't send troops to attack, he still dispatched reconnaissance teams. Whether it was Sunagakure or Iwagakure, even his ally village Amagakure was within the scope of investigation. The information was updated daily, allowing him to strategize and win battles from thousands of miles away. Shintaro opened the information and quickly scanned it. There wasn't much action in Sunagakure village. Since Pakura was transferred, Sunagakure left only a small force of 300 people stationed in the fortress. Puppet masters are special ninjas who use chakra threads to control puppets to fight. The best of these puppet masters are in the transformation project. They can turn a pile of scattered materials into puppet weapons. Naturally, they can also build fortresses into indestructible and dangerous artificial chasms. Although such a defense line couldn't threaten Shintaro, it was enough to scare Iwagakure and other ninjas in Konoha. If they wanted to attack, it would essentially be more trouble than it's worth. The Sunagakure ninja were inside the fortress, so today's intelligence only reported where the Sunagakure ninja were strengthening their defenses. The situation in Iwagakure seemed different. Iwagakure initially had over 1,000 people. After all, Iwagakure's troop reserves were more sufficient than Sunagakure's. However, during this time, Iwagakure seemed to start gradually withdrawing its troops. But the way Iwagakure was retreating was very strange. They all retreated in small groups. The number of people retreating each time was only in double digits. If the reconnaissance troops sent by Shintaro weren't strong enough, it would be difficult to detect that Iwagakure was gradually withdrawing its troops. It seemed that Iwagakure planned to retreat slowly and gradually. But this was very strange. After all, Iwagakure was fighting fiercely with Kumogakure, so a few dozen reinforcements every day were actually unnecessary, unless these Iwagakure ninjas weren't moving to Kumogakure's side. Shintaro stood up and turned to look at the large map hanging on the wall and thought. At present, Iwagakure and Kumogakure weren't fighting on their own territories, but had chosen the Land of Grass as their battlefield. Shintaro took out a pen and drew a line on the map, from the Land of Rain to the Land of Grass. It passed through the Land of Grass, the Land of Waterfalls, and the Land of Iron in the middle. According to intelligence, the direction of Iwagakure's troop movement should be along this line. However, the reconnaissance troops sent by Shintaro didn't leave the Land of Rain. so it was impossible to confirm if the Iwagakure troops had reached the final destination, the Land of Grass. There was a possibility that the Iwagakure ninjas were indeed moving along this route, but would stop in the middle to station troops and plan to attack the Land of Fire itself. The Land of Grass, the Land of Waterfalls, and the Land of Iron were all possible. Shintaro circled these three countries, and after thinking for a moment, he marked a cross over the Land of Iron. The Land of Iron didn't border the Land of Earth. If a Iwagakure attacked from this direction, logistics would be a huge problem. Moreover, the Land of Iron wasn't an ordinary small country. The Land of Iron was a warrior country, didn't interfere in ninja world affairs, and always supplied high-quality weapons to various countries unaffected by the two ninja wars. Therefore, the possibility of a Iwagakure attacking from this direction this time was very small. Among the two remaining countries, the Land of Waterfalls was relatively strong. During the first 5 Kage Summit, it was even given the 7 tails. In comparison, the Land of Grass was much weaker. Moreover, the terrain of the Land of Grass was mostly grasslands and forests, making it more suitable for transporting troops compared to the mountainous and waterfall-filled terrain of the Land of Waterfalls. So Shintaro crossed out the Land of Waterfalls again. The Land of Grass. He had a vague premonition. He immediately called people into the camp and ordered, "Go. Send people to the Land of Grass to investigate the information and pay attention to the movements of the Iwagakure ninjas." While the Konoha troops were stationed in the Land of Rain, Shintaro couldn't leave his post without permission, so he could only send more troops to the Land of Grass to investigate intelligence. Land of Grass, the temporary camp of Iwagakure ninjas. Shibito, why haven't you sent troops to attack? We've been in the Land of Grass for a few months. An Iwagakure ninja with a ponytail at the front and back of his head complained. Don't be anxious, my hero. This is Tsuchikage-sama's order and also Tsuchikage-sama's wisdom. This Iwagakure ninja, named Azuma Shibito, wore a blue turban and looked young. He seemed to be the commander of this Iwagakure troop. The Konoha troops have deployed troops from the northwestern defense line to fill the Sunagakure battlefield on the western front, while our troops in the Land of Grass increase every day, and now the number has reached 1,000. This gap will widen more and more until we can easily break through Konoha's defense and attack the heart of the Land of Fire. Shibito showed a confident smile. Mahira nodded when he heard these words and then showed a greedy expression. The land in the Land of Fire is really fascinating. He seemed to imagine the scene of Konoha handing over a large part of the Land of Fire to a Iwagakure after its defeat. Suddenly, there was a commotion outside the camp, and then an Iwagakure ninja broke in. Report. Shibito-sama, some Konoha ninjas just sneaked in. What? Did anyone see you? Shibito suddenly lost his composure. He slammed the table and stood up, asking loudly. The Konoha ninjas escaped. The Iwagakure ninja replied obediently. Then hurry and chase them. Yes, the Iwagakure ninja was so frightened that he immediately ran out of the camp. Shibito paced back and forth in the camp with his hands behind his back, frowning while thinking. Mahiru crossed his arms and waited for Shibito's decision. No, we can't take risks. If Konoha reacts, all our advantages will be lost. The troops move out and get ready to attack. Azuma Shibito laughed. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Konoha, I'm coming. 129. Disobedience and reinforcements in the Land of Rain at the Konoha command camp. A 3-man team ran in from outside the camp. Captain Shintaro. Shintaro looked up and saw 2 familiar faces outside. Hayama, Kosuke, and the chubby Chunin Tekano. The 3 of them were so exhausted that they couldn't even wipe the dust and bloodstains off their bodies before bursting in. Shintaro knew that with the strength of Hayama and Kosuke, they must have gone through a tough battle and run around in chaos. Moreover, these 3 were part of a team sent by Shintaro to the Land of Grass. Therefore, even without them speaking, he could already guess the general outcome. Is there something unusual in the Land of Grass? Yes, we discovered an Iwagakure force and sneaked in to investigate. We estimate there are at least 1,000 of them. Hayama looked excited, not just because of the urgent military situation, but also because he felt he had made a contribution. Kosuke also experiencing his youthful and energetic phase, advised from the side, "Hayama, calm down." Shintaro walked over, waved his hand to indicate that Kosuke didn't need to preach at this moment, then patted Hayama's shoulder and said, "You've made a great contribution now. Iwagakure plans to secretly attack the Land of Fire and invade our country from the Land of Grass. There are currently fewer than 500 troops on the northwest defense line, so it might be difficult to resist. I will now request instructions from the village to send troops for reinforcement. You also go and prepare for battle." Hayama, Kosuke, and Tekino all nodded solemnly and walked out of the camp. Shintaro went back to his seat and immediately wrote a letter, explaining the current situation in Konoha and Iwagakure's movements in the Land of Grass, and took the initiative to request reinforcements for the northwest defense line. He was worried that Jonin Mimura Hamaki at the northwest defense line was also anxiously awaiting reinforcements. However, a day later, Shintaro heard that Iwagakure and Konoha were officially at war on the border of the Land of Grass. But what awaited him was an order to stay silent. The order required him and all the troops stationed in the Land of Rain to remain silent. The reason given was that Iwagakure might attack Konoha from the Land of Rain, so Shintaro and the troops in the Land of Rain couldn't act rashly. They explained that the northwest defense line would naturally receive other reinforcements. Shintaro scoffed at this. He and his troops in the Land of Rain were the closest reinforcements to the northwest defense line and the most promising to save the situation. This decision by Konoha's top management completely went against Konoha's interests and only cared about the ideas and interests of the top management itself. Shintaro was very disappointed with the current senior management. "Kosuke-senpai, even though you're a genin, you're the best in the village in terms of strength and character. While I'm away, you'll be responsible for organizing the troops." Shintaro called Kosuke to the camp to explain the matter. Upon hearing this, Kosuke immediately understood Shintaro's intention and tried to persuade him. "Captain Shintaro, you are disobeying orders." Obviously, Shintaro planned to leave the troops in the Land of Rain and go to the rescue alone. But the orders from Konoha clearly stated that Shintaro must stay silent, so this was undoubtedly an act of disobedience. "Kosuke-senpai, do you think the Hokage and senior management are doing the right thing?" Shintaro asked calmly. Kosuke lowered his head and shook it slightly. Shintaro then left without looking back. When Kosuke lifted his head, Shintaro was already gone. He sighed and murmured, "Following orders is the iron law of a ninja." Kosuke was the most typical ninja, so he would obey the orders of the Hokage and his superiors even if he knew they were wrong. But Shintaro was different. In a sense, he wasn't even a ninja. The word obey orders couldn't restrain him. Shintaro went alone to aid the Konoha ninjas at the northwest defense line. At this time, some reinforcements had arrived. The so-called reinforcements turned out to be Team 7, led by Minato, Kakashi, Obito, and Rin. Judging by their ranks, the 2 Jonin and 2 Chunin were considered an elite team, but they clearly didn't qualify as reinforcements. What qualified this team as reinforcements was the famous Yellow Flash, Namikaze Minato. The 4 of them were now in the Land of Grass, gathered, and Minato pointed to a map on the ground and began giving instructions. "We have 2 missions. The first is to cut off Iwagakure's crucial supply line in the Land of Grass and blow up the Canopy Bridge. The other is to support the Konoha frontline troops." I decided to give the first task to Kakashi. Kakashi looked up upon hearing this. "No problem, Minato-sensei. I promise to complete the task." Minato nodded slightly, then looked at Obito and Rin. "Kakashi is now your temporary captain, and you must obey his orders." Rin nodded obediently, and although Obito was unsure, he wouldn't lose his temper like a child on the battlefield, so he pursed his lips and nodded. Minato continued, "I will escort you to the interior of the Land of Grass, and then we'll split up. This will ensure both tasks are completed to the maximum extent." "Understood." Kakashi, as the temporary team leader, nodded on behalf of Obito and Rin. Minato then packed up his map, and the 4 continued moving toward the interior of the Land of Grass. Soon, They passed through the grasslands and entered the towering forest at the heart of the land of grass. "Stop!" Minato gave the order, and Kakashi and the other three immediately took defensive positions. There might be enemies nearby. He squatted down, pointed his finger at the ground, and began using sensory ninjutsu to explore. At this moment, on a tree trunk not far away, an Awagakure ninja stood by a tree, ambushing with a long knife in hand. I originally came just to observe the terrain. I didn't expect to encounter Konoha ninjas and these three brats. How lucky. This person was none other than Mahiru. He had now divided into 20 shadow clones and was conducting a reconnaissance mission here. Although the Kagebunshin no Jutsu was a ninjutsu invented by Konoha's second Hokage, it inevitably spread due to its practicality. Besides combat, the most common purpose of the Kagebunshin no Jutsu was to gather intelligence. Because all the memories after the shadow clone was released would return to the main body. Minato finished investigating the current information and said, "There's only one enemy, but there are 20 shadow clones." Upon hearing this, Kakashi formed a seal with his hands, and instantly 1,000 birds chirped and lightning suddenly appeared in his hands. Since there's only one person, just confront the main body directly. After saying that, Kakashi ignored Minato's persuasion and rushed forward. Mahiru was delighted to see this and sneered inwardly. "You're overestimating your abilities." Besides shadow clones, he was also good at speed and sword skills, which would only hold off Kakashi's currently flawed Chidori. Mahiru's main body attacked Kakashi, while the shadow clones sneaked out from behind to attack Obito and Rin. Obito and Rin hurriedly responded. Fortunately, with Minato's help, all the shadow clones were quickly eliminated. But there was another problem on Kakashi's side. Although Kakashi's Chidori was powerful, it was too fast. Kakashi rushed towards Mahiru with Chidori, and even he couldn't react. The most terrifying thing was that Mahiru reacted. He swung his sword sideways, and it seemed that Kakashi's arm was about to be cut off. Minato rushed in a flash, embraced Kakashi, and lifted his arm, avoiding disaster. At the same time, he slightly touched Mahiru's leg with one hand, and a series of text marks rose on Mahiru's body. Sensing that the situation was unfavorable, Mahiru retreated to hide behind a tree. In a flash, Minato appeared behind Mahiru. "Are you the Yellow Flash?" "No wonder the boss said we could abandon the mission when we saw you." Mahiru reacted too late, but unfortunately, it was too late. Minato's kunai slit Mahiru's throat, ending his life. 130. The Canopy Bridge, Part 1. "Kakashi, this is all your fault. You almost got us killed." Obito rushed to blame Kakashi for his reckless behavior. Kakashi crossed his arms and snorted, "You're just too weak." Rin, long accustomed to their bickering, quietly tended to their wounds. After Minato finished dealing with the mystical leeches, he approached and said, "Kakashi, Obito is right. You were indeed reckless. This time I was here. If I hadn't been, you can't do things like this." "I understand, Minato-sensei." Kakashi nodded, and Minato still had to stare at him. Minato then continued on their journey with the three of them. As night fell, the four of them set up camp in the wilderness. During a brief rest, Minato sought a heart-to-heart talk with Obito. The two of them leaned against a large tree under the night sky. "Obito, you must know about Kakashi's father, right?" The night wind blew, and Minato's yellow hair swayed in the breeze. "I remember. I always visited Kakashi's house during that time." Obito answered honestly. Minato nodded and said, "That incident had a huge impact on Kakashi. It's not that Kakashi doesn't value his comrades, but he doesn't trust his comrades' strength and always wants to handle everything by himself. That's what happened today. Kakashi actually wanted to face that Awagakure ninja alone to protect you and Rin." Obito hadn't thought about this and was stunned for a long time. Minato gently touched Obito's spiky head and said, "So you need to cooperate well in the future. I hope you can understand your friend's burden and trust their strength. It's getting late. You should go and rest. We'll set off later." Obito nodded, leaned against the tree, and closed his eyes to sleep. At dawn, the sky began to brighten. Team Minato and Kakashi started to part ways. Minato turned to support the front lines, while Kakashi's team headed straight for the Canopy Bridge. Kakashi's team traveled through a dense bamboo forest. Along the way, they encountered no enemies except for some bamboo spike traps. However, deep in the bamboo forest, two pairs of eyes were watching the group. Why are Konoha ninja here? And it's just a few kids. I don't know. Let's capture one and interrogate them for information. Two Iwagakure ninjas spoke in low voices, one with smooth brown hair and the other a burly man wearing a blue turban. These two ninjas were both from Iwagakure. One was named Kak, and the other was named Taiseki. Kak was adept at earth escape, swordsmanship, and jinjutsu, while Taiseki had mastered a special ninjutsu, the hidden camouflage jutsu. Taiseki formed a seal with one hand, and then his entire body vanished on the spot. My Seigakure no jutsu. Taiseki quickly approached Rin, who was at the back of the three, and successfully ambushed her, knocking her out and carrying her on his shoulder. Kakashi reacted, drawing sword and stepping forward. Kat came from one side and briefly fought with Kakashi with a dagger tied to his arm. White fan of Konoha. Kak recognized the white fan dagger in Kakashi's hand and was shocked, but soon remembered that the white fang of Konoha was dead. Kak retreated to Taiseki, and then they both disappeared from the spot with Rin. Obito stepped forward anxiously to catch up, and Kakashi stopped Obito. Both are Jonin, you'll die. Obito brushed off Kakashi's hand and said, "So what if I die? Those who break the rules are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash." Kakashi said helplessly, "I mean not to save Rin, but to let me save her and you continue to complete the mission. Saving Rin is as important as blowing up the bridge, but there are two Jonin on Rin's side. You can't save her." Obito heard this and immediately objected. "No, I must save Rin too." Kakashi thought for a moment, knowing that Obito had a stubborn character and valued Rin greatly. Besides, he was facing two Jonin, so he indeed needed help. So Kakashi decided to stay with Obito. "Then follow quickly, don't hold me back." Kakashi caught up first, Obito followed slowly. It's you, Kakashi," Obito said uncertainly, but his heart was still touched, because Kakashi chose to trust his own strength and not abandon his comrades. Obito was now determined to save Rin. The two followed the trail ahead until they reached the outside of a cave. They should be inside. Kakashi looked at the signs on the ground and analyzed. "Then let's go in quickly. I don't know what they will do to Rin," Obito said, and was ready to enter the cave. "Calm down. Rin is a medical ninja. Even the enemy won't kill a medical ninja indiscriminately. Let's proceed cautiously." Kakashi drew his sword and slowly approached the cave. Obito took out his kunai and followed. But even with utmost caution, they were discovered by Taiseki. Taiseki once again used the hidden camouflage technique to approach and appeared behind Obito, slashing at him with his sword. "Watch out!" Kakashi turned and saw Obito behind him, rushing forward and pulling him away. Kakashi's left eye was hit by the slash, and blood splattered. "Kakashi!" Obito shouted anxiously, holding his kunai and attacking the rock. And Taiseki once again used the hidden camouflage technique to escape. Kakashi covered his eye, holding the sword in one hand, and said, "Leave me alone." Seeing Kakashi's state, Obito blamed himself. "I'm still dragging behind." Regret was evident. He gripped the kunai tightly and closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they had become a pair of two-tomo Sharingan. At this moment, Obito relied on his Sharingan to sharply detect movements behind him and decisively stab backward with his kunai. Uchihi, there was the sound of penetration, and Taiseki's figure appeared. These eyes, Taiseki stopped holding the sword and reluctantly fell to the ground. Obito also noticed the change in his eyes. "My Sharingan is open." He was filled with excitement. Only by opening the Sharingan could the Uchiha Clan's bloodline advantage be maximized. As a result, Obito's strength was also elevated to a higher level. Kakashi opened his only remaining right eye, looked at Obito, and sighed, "It's not a loss to trade one of my eyes for a pair of your Sharingan eyes." Obito felt guilty again after hearing this. "Let's go save Rin." Maybe Rin can heal my eye. Obito nodded heavily. The two then entered the cave. Kak had tied up Rin and was using Jinjutsu to torture her for information. To blow up the canopy bridge? Just you kids? It's really ridiculous. Although Kak said this, he still considered a few people a big threat. The canopy bridge was the most important transportation hub for a Wagakire's attack. If it was bombed, it would greatly affect the battle situation. Kak suddenly turned around and saw Kakashi and Obito breaking in. Taiseki is dead? Looks like you have some skill. Kak revealed the dagger on his arm, and he rushed towards the two of them with extreme speed. 131. The Canopy Bridge, Part 2, Kakashi. Rin is under Jinjutsu. Obito used his double Magatama Sharingan to see the strange chakra in Rin's body and shouted. Kakashi stood ready with a white fang sword in his hand. I know. Let's deal with the enemy first. Kak's speed was very fast, both arms equipped with short blades. He appeared to spin his body, and the short blades on his arms attacked at high speed. Kakashi was the first to confront him. Clang the sword parried fire attacks one after another. Seeing that Kakashi was not easy to handle, Kak immediately changed his target to Obito. Kak spun several times, throwing the sword in his hand and forcing Kakashi back, and slashing at Obito with the other hand. Obito tightly held a kunai with both hands, gritting his teeth to barely withstand the attack. Seeing this, Kakashi slashed with his sword and helped Obito out of the encirclement. The three of them fought together and exchanged several rounds in a short period. Kak felt strongly that these two brats were not simple, and a strong killing intent arose in his heart. I can't let these two kids grow up. He seized the opportunity, waved his hand forward, and slashed Obito's neck from inside to outside with two sharp blades. Obito opened his Sharingan and tried his best to duck. At this moment, Kakashi took advantage of the gap between Kak's strikes and came from the front, raising his sword to attack him. However, Kak relied on his strong control to instantly retract his waving hand and slashed at Kakashi with two sharp blades from outside to inside. Seeing the sharp blade about to hit Kakashi first, at this critical moment, Obito came to the rescue. All this happened in an instant. Fortunately, Obito used his Sharingan to clearly see Kak's movements and reacted in time. Obito lifted his foot to block Kak's hand, then opened his leg, completely blocking Kak's arm and sword, freeing Kakashi. Kakashi took this opportunity to slash with his sword, diagonally splitting Kak's left shoulder and chest. Kak rolled his eyes and fell unconscious to the ground. Kakashi stepped on Kak's back and jumped to Rin's side. Obito also got up from the ground anxiously and rushed to Rin's side. What should I do? I'm not good at Jinjutsu. Obito regretted that he had never encountered Jinjutsu before. Kakashi said, I'm not good at it either, but I can understand it. He thought to himself, I have to thank Shintaro for this. Kakashi had seen the power of Shintaro's Jinjutsu, so he practiced Jinjutsu interpretation methods for a while. Ordinary Jinjutsu could no longer affect him. He formed a seal with his hands and helped Rin dispel the Jinjutsu. Rin opened her eyes with a blank look and saw Kakashi and Obito. Kakashi, Obito, where are we? Obito explained what had just happened, and Kakashi used a white fang sword to cut the ropes on Rin's body. Rin freed herself from the cut ropes and stood up, suddenly realizing movement behind them. Kak unexpectedly soared from the ground. Doton, Iwayato Kazushi. The seal hit the ground, and then the entire cave began to shake violently. Kak then crawled towards the cave entrance. Naive brats. None of you will even live. He ran out of the cave with a grim smile. Kakashi didn't have time to regret not finishing his last attack and immediately ran for his life with Obito and Rin. The cave dome began to collapse, and gravel kept falling. Worse still, from time to time, large boulders would fall intact, hitting the ground with a loud thud. As they were busy escaping, a large boulder suddenly fell from the sky. Just as it was about to hit Kakashi, Obito rushed forward, grabbing Kakashi's clothes and throwing him away. When Kakashi reacted, he only saw Obito falling under the boulder, with his entire right side crushed under the huge stone. He anxiously pushed the boulder to save Obito, but the stone didn't budge at all. This boulder might weigh more than 10 tons, and Kakashi was helpless at the moment. Obito looked at Kakashi's hard-working figure with his left eye open and smiled. Kakashi, don't waste your effort. The Wagakure ninjas are still outside the cave. By the way, I forgot. I'm the only one who hasn't given you a gift to congratulate you on becoming a Jonin. I've thought about it for a long time, and finally, I know what to give you. Don't worry, it's not something useless. I'll give you my Sharingan. This is my wish, so just accept it. Rin, use your medical ninjutsu to transplant my Sharingan into Kakashi's left eye. I'm already dying, but I'll be your eyes to help you see the future clearly. Kakashi knelt weakly, punching the stone with his fists, tears streaming down his face. A long time ago, he swore at his father's grave that he would find a way to complete his mission and save his friends. But the current situation was his mission was not yet completed, and his partner was crushed under a stone while trying to save him. Rin stepped forward and pulled Kakashi's clothes. Kakashi, don't let Obito down. After saying this, Rin looked at Obito, tears streaming down her face, but Rin was strong. She followed Obito's instructions and performed a simple transplant operation on Kakashi in the collapsing cave, transplanting Obito's left eye into Kakashi's left eye socket. Obito closed his eyes, and blood spilled from the corner of his mouth, as if he didn't have much time left. Kakashi, I leave Rin to you. Kakashi agreed. The roof of the collapsing cave opened, and Kakashi raised the white fang sword and aimed it at Kak in front. Kak thought he had finished off the three of them, sitting and resting. Kakashi opened his left eye, revealing the double Magatama Sharingan. The two quickly closed in on each other in an instant without making any other movements. Kakashi slashed with his sword, and this time Kak hit the white fang sword with two staggering swords, directly cutting the white fang sword into several pieces. Kakashi's eyes were sharp. He took a step back and dropped the remaining sword, quickly forming a seal with his hands, and lightning suddenly appeared. Chidori, Kak and Kakashi closed in again, and this time Kakashi was much faster, and one of the Sharingans helped him overcome Chidori's weaknesses. This Chidori accurately pierced Kak's chest, winning with one strike. Kakashi killed Kak and still did not relax. Because enemy reinforcements had arrived, he didn't even have time to collect Obito's remains, so he could only flee with Rin. The Iwagakure ninjas used earth elements to collapse the entire cave and seal it off. Obito gradually got buried deep in the ground one by one. It took a lot of effort to build a good relationship with Kakashi, but in the end, I still couldn't confess my love to Rin. I really wanted to stay with you all longer. The Iwagakure ninjas guarded Obito and began to chase Kakashi and Rin. Kakashi and Rin could only run away, but even though they escaped, they wouldn't be able to run for long, because the enemy reinforcements behind them were all elite. But Kakashi had fought several battles and was in poor condition. After running for a while, Kakashi and Rin were caught. Rin, you go first. I promised Obito that I would take good care of you. But Kakashi held Chidori, ready to protect Rin with his life. Rin seemed to want to say something else, but at this moment, two figures, one yellow and one white, suddenly appeared. Minato-sensei. Shintaro. Kakashi immediately relaxed upon seeing this. The side effects of the transplanted Sharingan were revealed at this time, and Chidori also disappeared. Minato saw the embarrassed appearance of Kakashi and Rin, and noticed that Obito was not there, and he had already guessed in his mind. Sorry, I'm late. Shintaro saw the Sharingan in Kakashi's left eye, and his heart sank. Kakashi actually had a Sharingan. It's just a pity about Obito. This is a double Magatama since he opened his eyes. Shintaro sighed in his heart. 132. The turning point of the Ninja World War when the Iwagakure ninjas saw Minato and Shintaro approaching. They initially scoffed at their small numbers, but upon closer inspection, they realized something was amiss. This, the yellow flash and the white-haired demon's eyes. Run. We can't handle these two. If you encounter these two, you won't be punished for running away. After recognizing Minato and Shintaro, the Iwagakure ninjas immediately scattered and fled in a panic. But it was too late. Once Minato and Shintaro took action, the Iwagakure ninjas understood why there was a rule about no punishment for retreating. Not only could they not be defeated, but they couldn't escape even if they wanted to. Rasen sank ch Rinbuk Sanshiki. Curse technique lapse, blue. Minato threw a dozen kunai, which flew among the fleeing Iwagakure ninjas, and then his figure kept flashing between them. Each flash would kill an enemy with a kunai or Rasengan. Shintaro raised his hand. A blue light suddenly appeared, and he used blue to capture all the ninjas running towards the edge of the area. The Iwagakure ninjas were tightly sucked in by the strong suction, their bones pressing against each other, making a crunching sound. Shintaro increased the output effect of blue, and with just a few clicks, all the bones of these Iwagakure ninjas were crushed, and they naturally lost their lives. The two quickly wiped out all the Iwagakure ninjas. Kakashi knelt on the ground and watched the two figures in front of him. Although he was grateful to be saved, he couldn't help but feel disappointed. Shintaro is already on par with Minato-sensei, but I couldn't even protect my friend. Minato and Shintaro approached after dealing with the enemies. Minato asked, "Kakashi, is the mission complete? Why isn't Obito here?" Kakashi shook his head. "The mission isn't complete. Rin was initially captured by Iwagakure ninjas. Obito and I went to rescue her, and Rin was saved, but Obito died in the cave to save me." He punched the ground hard, feeling guilty about Obito's death. Minato looked at Kakashi's left eye. His face darkened, and he said emotionally, "This it's Obito's gift to you, isn't it?" Kakashi nodded. "Cherish it. It's Obito's intention." Minato patted Kakashi's shoulder and said. Shintaro asked from the side, "How did Obito die?" Kakashi raised his head and said, "When he saved me, he was crushed by a huge rock on the right side of his body. After transplanting his left eye to me, the cave completely collapsed and Obito was buried under it." Shintaro understood. No wonder Kakashi only brought back one of Obito's eyes and didn't see his body. Half of his body was crushed by a huge rock and buried under the cave. It seemed Obito was indeed dead. This time, Minato comforted Kakashi and said, "Obito is a hero of Konoha. Let's complete the mission first, then retrieve Obito's body. Obito will be placed in Konoha's Martyrs Cemetery and will be honored by future generations." Kakashi nodded heavily. Minato, Kakashi, Rin, and Shintaro then headed to Canopy Bridge. Canopy Bridge spanned a deep and wide gorge and was magnificent. It was precisely because of this bridge that Obito died in battle. Kakashi took out the remaining explosive tags from his ninja pouch. Shintaro waved his hand and said, "No need for explosive tags. Leave it to me." Kakashi stepped back and watched him fly into the air and raise his hand to release the blue light again. Curse technique lapse maximum output, blue. The bridge was instantly destroyed by the powerful suction that suddenly appeared in the air. The deck of the bridge continued to crack, and a large number of cement beams and steel bars flew into the air and were lifted into a large ball. In an instant, the entire bridge collapsed, leaving nothing in its place, all sucked into the sky. Shintaro then threw all the debris of the bridge into the distance, scattering the large pieces across the ground. Canopy Bridge was completely erased from the map. The main transportation artery of Iwagakure was severed. Even if the bridge wasn't destroyed, Iwagakure was defeated. However, the significance of Canopy Bridge was still great. Without this bridge, Iwagakure couldn't launch a large-scale attack. Therefore, Konoha's military losses were mitigated. The time needed to repair the bridge was enough for Konoha to redeploy troops to consolidate the defense line. As a result, Iwagakure didn't need to continue fighting Konoha. After the Battle of Canopy Bridge, Konoha no longer considered Iwagakure a primary concern. It's no exaggeration to say that the Battle of Canopy Bridge was a turning point in the Shinobi World War that saved Konoha from attacks on three sides. News of Canopy Bridge's destruction quickly spread to Iwagakure and Konoha. In the Tsuchikage building in Iwagakure, sitting in the Tsuchikage's office was a short old man. This unimpressive small old man was the third Tsuchikage Inoki. Inoki didn't feel too angry or shocked after reading the frontline battle report. He rubbed his chin and thought for a long time, calmly recalling the current situation in the ninja world. He had the nickname Noki of both scales, meaning his mind was as accurate as scales. This third Suchikage was good at communication and could always secure the most favorable conditions for the village. Since we can't gain anything from Konoha on the battlefield, let's gain it through negotiations. After all, Konoha needs peace more than we do. He thought about his next steps. The war between Awagakure and Konoha could be postponed for now. Inoki planned to let Awagakure withdraw from the ninja war, which was now in its final stages of life and death. He had no intention of taking this risk with Awagakure village. Awagakure had seized a lot of wealth from the land of thunder and the land of rain and had gained enough benefits. There was no need to fight Konoha to the death. Moreover, Inoki was still afraid of Konoha's yellow, Flash Namikaze's Minato, and the white-haired devil's eyes Uchiha Shintaro, so he didn't plan to continue fighting Konoha. But Inoki didn't intend to withdraw his troops unconditionally. He wanted to seek peace while securing more benefits for Awagakure. Now the plan to send a large force from the land of grass to attack Konoha alone had fallen apart, and the forces from the land of rain didn't dare to act without permission. Awagakure had only one army left overseas. That was the Awagakure ninja force fiercely fighting Kumogakure. The commander of this force was his son. He immediately wrote a letter to his son, asking him to send a small force to harass the Fire Nation's border while fighting Kumogakure as usual. After that, Inoki wrote another letter to Konoha, persuading Konoha to negotiate peace with Awagakure. In this way, Inoki could prove that Awagakure could threaten Konoha and gain enough bargaining power to strive for benefits in peace talks. This was a very clever move, but Konoha wouldn't give in immediately. A few days later, Konoha sent troops to strengthen the defense. The team leader was Uchiha Fugaku, indicating that Konoha's senior management couldn't find a ninja in the village who could lead the team. Konoha's senior management appointed Fugaku as the deputy commander and sent him to the defense line to help lead the Uchiha Clan and its forces. It's also worth mentioning that Fugaku brought along his 3-year-old son, Uchiha Itachi, to sharpen his son's will. This was also the first time Itachi's name was collectively noticed by Konoha's top management. 133. The lost Obito northwest of the Land of Fire. The Konoha ninja on the defensive line were cleaning up the aftermath. The battles of the past few days had left only 4 Konoha ninja, indicating the brutality of the conflict. Thus, the subsequent work would take a few more days. The bodies of Konoha ninja were transported back to Konoha one by one. Minato and Shintaro stood together, watching the scene. Minato sighed and said, "No matter the battlefield, it always ends up like this. That's war," Shintaro said, shaking his head. At this moment, Kakashi and Rin returned from a distance. Minato and Shintaro walked closer. "Did you search for Obito's body? Did you find it?" Minato looked behind the two of them, but did not see Obito's body. Kakashi shook his head and said, "We didn't find it." Shintaro looked at him strangely because according to what was previously said, Obito should have been buried in the cave, and there was no chance he couldn't be found. Kakashi explained, "I used Earth Release to open the cave, but I still couldn't find Obito's body." Rin nodded and said, "We searched for a long time, but couldn't find it. It seems to have disappeared." Minato touched his chin, thinking for a moment, and speculated, maybe Iwagakure stole Obito's body. He then raised his head and said, "If that's the case, I'll go to Iwagakure to negotiate." Kakashi and Rin nodded, seemingly thinking this was the only possibility. Shintaro on the side felt very strange. After all, if Iwagakure had stolen it, it would be for the Uchiha's Sharingan. However, Obito's body only had the second Magatama Sharingan. Iwagakure didn't need to take the risk for 2 Magatama Sharingan. After all, Konoha defeated Iwagakure in the Land of Grass. Iwagakure ninja coming to the Land of Grass at this time and causing trouble seemed unlikely. Shintaro then said, "Let me go and have a look. After all, I'm Obito's classmate and a fellow Uchiha Clan member." Minato might have thought Shintaro would take Obito's Sharingan, so he nodded and said, "All right, you can go and confirm again." Kakashi told Shintaro the specific location of the cave, and Shintaro set off. When he arrived at the cave, Shintaro saw the rocky shore. The original cave had long since collapsed, and the remaining ruins had been overturned by Kakashi's earth release, turning it into this state. It appeared he had indeed paid careful attention. After all, Obito was one of his few close friends. Shintaro looked around and came to a large rock. This rock was covered in dried blood, and it was undoubtedly the rock that had crushed Obito. Kakashi apparently found this rock too, and completely gave up after finding no body beneath it. Shintaro observed the area with his 6 eyes and found nothing but rocks. In other words, Obito was indeed missing. Did a Wagakure really take Obito? If so, I'm afraid this matter will take a lot of energy to negotiate. Seeing this situation, Shintaro thought it was like Minato's speculation. To secretly take Obito's body from the collapsed cave would require high-level Earth release. From this perspective, it was indeed only the Earth release experts from a Wagakure who could take action. Shintaro then set aside his doubts for the time being and returned to the Konoha defensive line. Kakashi stepped forward with hope on his face, but was disappointed to see Shintaro return empty-handed. "You didn't find it either." Shintaro nodded and said, "It has indeed disappeared." Minato saw that Shintaro had returned with no results, so he consoled him. "I will report this to Lord Hokage. If it was done by a Wagakure, we will do our best to bring Obito back to his roots." Kakashi could only nod. The matter ended for now. Obito's deeds spread back to Konoha, making everyone in Konoha associate the name Uchiha Obito with a hero for the first time. Previously, Obito's name was associated with weakness. No one expected that this kind-hearted Uchiha boy would die heroically on the battlefield. The grandparents whom Obito had helped were particularly sad, as if the one who had been sacrificed was their own child and grandchild. Maybe because Obito was raised by his grandmother, he was very aware of the inconveniences of the elderly. After his grandmother passed away, Obito passed on his filial piety to the elders in Konoha. Almost all the elders in Konoha knew about Obito, and even if they hadn't received help, they had at least heard of him. So when the news of Obito's sacrifice returned to Konoha, the first to offer condolences were various elderly care homes and hospitals in Konoha. The influence of these elderly people was still significant, so Konoha officials specifically issued an obituary. Passers-by would stop and express their silence. After all, the war had been going on for a long time, and not many people could receive official Konoha obituaries. Kurenai passed by with Shiro in her arms. When she saw Obito's name in the obituary, she was stunned for a long time, her mouth open in disbelief. She immediately thought of Rin, who had a good relationship with Obito, and returned home with Shiro, intending to write a letter to Rin to express condolences and comfort. Guy passing by the obituary had tears in his eyes, not only in mourning for Obito, but also because the last obituary posted here for a ninja was his father, Due. "Obito, you and my father both burned your youth for Konoha. You are a hero who will always be remembered by Konoha." Guy, who was somewhat face-blind and sometimes couldn't recognize Obito's face, would definitely remember him forever this time. Asuma also passed by the obituary posted in the village. He originally wanted to continue contributing to Konoha on the battlefield, but was forced to stay by his father. "Obito, you are no longer the weakest in my heart. You are a hero of Konoha." He bowed to the obituary. Asuma then glanced to the Hokage building. The infantry are fighting, but the generals sit in their positions with calm minds. Or, you are not worthy of being a general at all. Then, who is the general of the land of fire? Asuma sank into his own thoughts. Everything that happened during the war made him suspicious. Everyone in Konoha thought Obito had died. But Obito woke up from a strange bed, which seemed to be an unknown cave. He opened his eyes, and what appeared before him was a strange old man with a Sharingan. He opened his remaining eye and said, "Grandfather, did you save me?" "Thank you." However, the old man said in a low voice, "It's too early to thank me now. I will let you repay this kindness properly." Obito said, "Sorry, I can't stay here forever. I have to go back to the village." The figures of Kakashi and Rin appeared in his mind. At this moment, Obito belatedly realized that the old man in front of him also had a Sharingan, so he must be a member of the Uchiha Clan. The old man staggered to sit on a stone chair beside him, with strange white tubes inserted into his back, looking like he was in his twilight years. As a member of the Uchiha Clan and an old man, it made sense that Obito would surely know him. After all, he had essentially seen all the elderly in the village. Obito's body trembled, and he thought of the only possible explanation. Could you be the village's rogue ninja? The old man seemed to understand Obito's thoughts, lowered his hand, and spoke slowly. I am Uchiha Madara. 134. Back to the southeast for Konoha's northwest defense line. Another transfer order was sent from Konoha village. Shintaro, it looks like we're heading to the southeast defense line again. Minato opened the transfer order, and not only was he transferred to the southeast, but Shintaro was as well. Minato had initially been transferred from the southeast defense line to support the northwest defense line, and Shintaro had also been on the southeast defense line before coming to the Land of Rain. Ninjas are very quick. Minato organized his troops and immediately set off. Everyone arrived at the southeast defense line. The southeast defense line has undergone some changes compared to last year. Most importantly, the eastern defense line no longer requires too much ninja defense. This is because all the fortresses and bases attacked by Kirigakure from the Eastern Front have been dismantled earlier. Therefore, the current battlefield is essentially the Southern Front. In Minato's absence, Shikaku was responsible for coordinating and leading the southeast defense line. Minato and Shikaku completed a simple handover. Both were smart people, so the handover was naturally straightforward and efficient. Shikaku informed Minato of all the changes and details of the current battle situation. Minato quickly understood the situation. It seems like Kirigakure can't hold out much longer. According to intelligence, Kirigakure's attacks had significantly weakened. Combined with other intelligence, Kirigakure should no longer have the strength to fight against Konoha. Shikaku nodded but expressed his concern. But Kirigakure and Sunagakure have stopped. If these two enemies of Konoha join forces, they can still cause us a lot of trouble. After all, Konoha has also expended a lot of energy now. Minato nodded, agreeing with the concern. Yes, although Kirigakure and Sunagakure might not have the strength to attack each other, we cannot rule out the possibility you mentioned. To be cautious, someone still needs to gather information. Shikaku smiled upon hearing this and said, I have a suitable candidate. So Shintaro was called to the camp. Shikaku-sensei, I knew it was you who called me. Shintaro waved his hand helplessly and walked in. No choice. Who else is more suitable than you? Those who can do more work. Shikaku stroked his beard and handed over the task.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.